Chapter 5107. Kong Shinmu almost failed to resist the first wave of attacks. However, his defensive stance was still very firm. Coupled with the fact that he had transformed the dragon soldier Chen Xing's battle runes into defensive battle runes, he was finally able to resist the opponent's attack head-on. Moreover, Kong Shinmu began to devour the opponent's thunder attribute power. Soon, he gained a stronger resistance against the power of the lightning attribute. Then he looked at Yi Yin's side. Yi Yin's defensive abilities were already impressive, but at this moment, he did not use any defensive abilities. Instead, he relied on his extremely strange body techniques to tangle with the fire attribute Dragon Soul Demon statue. The Dragon Soul Demon statue kept unleashing fire attribute dragon martial skills, but it could not touch Yi Yin's black dragon body. Yi Yin's black dragon body did not look small, but it was extremely agile. Kong Shinmu could sense that his understanding of spatial void power was also very good. He could travel through the void in an instant and go to another safe place. If we split up like this, I'm afraid it will be very difficult to kill these two Dragon Soul Demon statues. Why don't we work together? I'll block their attacks, and you find an opportunity to attack them. As long as you injure them, I can take the opportunity to destroy them. Kong Shinmu quickly suggested. He did not lack offensive methods, but in this situation, the Dragon Soul Demon statue's defense was too strong. If he wanted to achieve results, he could only use some powerful methods. That was not what he wanted. Therefore, it was best to cooperate with Yi Yin. Yi Yin had the same idea. Although his attacks were powerful, and his concealment and body techniques were quite outstanding, he could not do two things at the same time. While dodging and defending, he almost could not find any opportunity to attack his opponent. In fact, even if he attacked, it would be offset by the Dragon Soul Demon statue's attack. It was best for the two of them to work together like they did in the previous round. Immediately afterward, Kong Shinmu's black dragon body flew in front of the fire attribute Dragon Soul Demon statue and blocked several of its fiery blasts. These fiery powers were all devoured by Kong Shinmu. The two Dragon Soul golems gathered together, but at this moment, Kong Shinmu seemed to feel that the power of the two golems had increased again. Is it because we've gathered together? Or is it because the power of the Dragon Soul Golem will increase with time? Kong Shinmu didn't know which reason it was, but in any case, he had to get rid of the two Dragon Soul Golems first. He kept unleashing the 9th stage Extreme Dao Flood Dragon Burst, but this attack was just a cover. In reality, it didn't have much destructive power. After all, Kong Shinmu's Chen Xing Dragon Weapon was a defensive battle rune, and the Divine Dragon Tyrant Body Art was also a defensive stance. He kept attracting the attention of the two Dragon Soul Golems. At this time, Yi Yin was finally free. Looking at the situation in front of him, he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. This Kong Shinmu is too strong. Despite facing off against two Dragon Soul Demon statues at the same time, it showed no signs of losing. As expected of a character that can last until the end of the defense round. I'm afraid these two Dragon Soul Demon statues haven't reached his limit yet, right? Yi Yin thought to himself, but he didn't slack off in the slightest. He unleashed 9 waves of attacks at the fastest speed. His 9 waves of attacks were the Black Dragon's breath, which condensed into a beam of light that had the most terrifying penetrative power. The Black Dragon's breath hit the Thunder Attribute Dragon Soul Demon statue in the blink of an eye. Because the 9 Black Dragon's breath hit the same spot, the defense of the Dragon Soul Demon statue was finally broken, and a wound appeared on it. That wound gave Kong Shinmu another opportunity. The devouring power surged into the body of the Dragon Soul Demon statue with a loud bang. The Dragon Soul Demon statue was made of some kind of extremely hard material, and what drove it were the countless array formations and runes engraved on it. Although it didn't have a weak body of flesh and blood like the Dragon Martialists, these Dragon Soul Demon statues were more afraid of the array formations being destroyed. Kong Shinmu's devouring power eroded the body of the Thunder Attribute Dragon Soul Demon statue. Moreover, as he devoured them, he could clearly sense the various details and effects of the formation imprints. If I devour a Dragon Soul Demon statue, doesn't that mean that I can create such a Dragon Soul Demon statue? Kong Shinmu was a little depressed. These Dragon Soul Demon statues were very powerful existences. Of course, those array formations were only secondary. Even if he mastered those array formations, he would still need the more important core of the formation eye to let the Dragon Soul Demon statue unleash this level of combat power. When Kong Shinmu devoured, He also felt the existence of some of the core of the formation Eye. Those core of the formation Eye determined the greatest strength that the Dragon Soul Demon statue could unleash. The other array formations only determined the movement and function of the Dragon Soul Demon statue. There are many levels of core of the formation Eye. The core of the Thunder attribute formation Eye determines that its power has reached the third level of the Transcendent God realm. Kong Shin-mu thought to himself. The power of the third level of the Transcendent God realm couldn't be created casually. The core of the formation Eye that determined its power couldn't be replicated by Kong Shin-mu, because he was only at the peak of the Dragon Emperor realm. The core of the formation Eye required some special power of the third level of the Transcendent God realm to create. So, even if I master all the array formations, I can only create an empty shell of this Dragon Soul Demon statue? Kong Shin-mu was a little disappointed. However, he still activated his devouring power and kept devouring the Dragon Soul Demon statue. Be it the array formations or the core of the formation Eye, they were all devoured by him. All the power was concentrated in his devouring space and transformed into the purest devouring power. The cycle was endless. As Kong Shin-mu's devouring power eroded the Thunder attribute Dragon Soul Demon statue, some problems soon appeared. However, Kong Shin-mu felt that the Dragon Soul Demon statue seemed to be recovering rapidly. It actually has a very strong recovery ability. This shocked Kong Shin-mu again. This meant that the power of the two Dragon Soul Demon statues in front of him was much stronger than that of the Water attribute Dragon Soul Demon statue. Perhaps not every team would be able to defeat the two Dragon Soul Golems at the same time. It was unlike the Water attribute Dragon Soul Demon statue from before, which seemed to be for everyone to practice with. At this moment, the attacks of the two Dragon Soul Demon statues were getting more and more intense. Jiang Shenwu could feel that their strength was rapidly increasing. Although this rate of increase was not as fast as the increase in the surrounding attacks during the previous round of the competition, it was still enough to make him feel pressured. After all, the attacks of the two Dragon Soul Demon statues were originally at the third level of the Transcendent God realm. If they continued to strengthen, it would undoubtedly be even more terrifying. Chapter 5108. At this moment, Kong Shin-mu's devouring power was already extremely powerful. However, in the face of the Thunder attribute Dragon Soul Golem, it actually couldn't reduce much of its combat power. After all, the opponent isn't a living creature, but a golem. As long as its core formation Eye isn't destroyed, its combat power won't be reduced too much. Kong Shin-mu thought to himself, but he still continued to devour the Thunder attribute Dragon Soul Golem. On one hand, the devouring power could enhance his defensive ability. On the other hand, although the effect was minimal, the Dragon Soul Golem was still somewhat affected, just not too much. As long as he continued, the power of the Thunder attribute Dragon Soul Golem would be devoured sooner or later. Anyway, Kong Shin-mu wasn't afraid of the attacks of the two Dragon Soul Golems. No matter what kind of attacks the Thunder attribute and Fire attribute Dragon Soul Golems launched at Kong Shin-mu would always be able to resist them. Although it wasn't easy for him to resist them, he was basically unscathed. Yi-in, apart from the Thunder attribute and Water attribute dragon techniques, do you know any other dragon techniques? Kong Shin-mu suddenly thought of this. It wouldn't be a problem for him to deal with the two Thunder attribute Dragon Soul Golems. However, what Kong Shin-mu was worried about was that if three other Dragon Soul Golems of other attributes appeared, it would be difficult for him to resist them if he didn't make preparations in advance. According to the current situation, the activated Dragon Soul Golems were getting stronger and stronger. If the next two Dragon Soul Golems joined forces, Kong Shin-mu might not be a match for them. Not to mention that there might be three of them. Therefore, he had to make preparations in advance. The only thing that Kong Shin-mu could do now was to rely on Yi-in. If Yi-in knew dragon techniques of other attributes, then Kong Shin-mu could devour their power and turn it into his own resistance against the power of that attribute. After hearing Kong Shin-mu's question, Yi-in secretly pondered. He didn't answer immediately. Obviously, he was analyzing the pros and cons. Only now did he realize that Kong Shin-mu seemed to be able to devour the power of a certain attribute, and then increase his resistance against that attribute. But now there was a problem. Yi-in also had a lot of hidden abilities. Did he need to expose them in front of Kong Shin-mu? The reason why he didn't want to expose himself was because if he encountered Kong Shin-mu in the third round, he might be able to defeat Kong Shin-mu. However, when he thought about it carefully, with so many people left, the possibility of encountering Kong Shinmu in the final battle was not high. Moreover, until now, Yi Yin actually had some doubts. Was he really a match for Kong Shinmu? Even if Yi Yin used all of his hidden tricks, he found that he couldn't do anything to Kong Shinmu, not to mention the tricks he had shown so far. This was what Yi Yin was most conflicted about. Since it was useless to hide, what was the point of hiding? He might as well unleash his full potential now and work together with Kong Shinmu to defeat more Dragon Soul Demon statues. Yi Yin was sure that Kong Shinmu still had some hidden tricks up his sleeves. However, just the tricks he had shown now were enough to crush Yi Yin. No matter what, Yi Yin felt that the possibility of him defeating Kong Shinmu was slim. From the start of the Small World segment, he felt that Kong Shinmu's strength seemed to be much stronger than his. The defense segment just now had confirmed this point once again. Kong Shinmu could actually resist the attack of a level 5 transcendent god, which shocked him. At this thought, Yi Yin finally made a decision. Yes, I've cultivated every attribute of the dragon martial technique so that I can fight in different environments. Yi Yin quickly answered Kong Shinmu. When Kong Shinmu heard this, he was not very happy. Instead, he was a little worried. After all, it was very difficult for a person to simultaneously cultivate multiple dragon martial skills to the pinnacle of all the dragon martial skills. In this way, if Jiang Shenwu wanted to devour those energies and strengthen his body's resistance, he would have to spend even more time. After all, the stronger the power devoured, the faster Kong Shinmu's resistance would increase. However, there was no time to worry so much now. Anyway, the Thunderfire Dragon Soul Demon statues haven't been defeated yet. We still have time to slowly deal with them. Kong Shinmu thought to himself before saying to Yi Yin, then use your dragon martial techniques on me. Yi Yin did not think too much about it. Anyway, the dragon martial techniques that he casually used now could not break through Kong Shinmu's defense. After all, Kong Shinmu was using all his strength to deal with the attacks of the 2 Dragon Soul Demon statues. Therefore, Kong Shinmu could be said to be in a state where his defense was on full alert. In this situation, Yi Yin did not think that he would hurt Kong Shinmu. Based on Kong Shinmu's defense, wasn't that a joke? Immediately after, Yi Yin took the initiative to attack. In addition to the thunder, fire, and water attributes, Yi Yin was actually able to display the power of various other attributes. Star attribute, hurricane attribute, wood attribute, ice attribute, dark attribute. All kinds. This Yi Yin really hit it well. Kong Shinmu could not help but look at this kid in a different light. It seemed that his foresight was not bad. Most importantly, the various elemental dragon martial skills that Yi Yin had displayed were all at least at the level of a Holy Spirit dragon martial skill. Furthermore, they were all heaven-rank Holy Spirit dragon martial skills. Without a doubt, Yi Yin's strength was extremely terrifying, and the talent hidden in it was even more terrifying. Even though Kong Shinmu had the devouring power, it was difficult for him to have all these dragon martial techniques of different attributes at the same time. After all, although he could directly learn and comprehend the dragon martial techniques through devouring, it was difficult to find so many people who were willing to devour for him to cultivate. If it was someone else, Kong Shinmu would really not be willing to devour. After all, it was not good to bite off more than one could chew. Cultivating too many dragon martial techniques would be useless, and instead, it would expose his ability to devour and cultivate dragon martial techniques. Therefore, it was really not easy for Yi Yin to cultivate so many types of dragon martial techniques at the same time. At the very least, his talent had to be top-notch. Otherwise, it was impossible for him to cultivate every type of dragon martial technique to the heaven rank. Moreover, the financial resources behind him were quite powerful. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to obtain so many Holy Spirit dragon martial techniques to cultivate. This Yi Yin was not simple. However, Kong Shinmu knew that it was not the time to be emotional about this. In Yi Yin's eyes, he was also not simple. Immediately after, when Yi Yin displayed those dragon martial techniques, Kong Shinmu began to devour the power of those dragon martial techniques. These dragon martial techniques were all released towards Kong Shinmu. Chapter 5109. Regardless of what the 2 Thunder and Fire Dragon Soul Golems were thinking, Kong Shinmu began to devour the dragon skills of various attributes launched by Yi Yin. As he devoured the power of various attributes, his resistance to them also increased rapidly. Although he didn't reach the limit, It soon doubled his resistance to the corresponding attributes. Besides, Yi Yin's attack continued. Kong Shinmu's devouring also continued. The Thunder Dragon Soul Golem kept attacking Kong Shinmu, but it couldn't break through Kong Shinmu's defense. Kong Shinmu's defense was now impregnable, and it wasn't something the Dragon Soul Golem of this level could resist. During the devouring process, Kong Shinmu soon discovered something peculiar. As he devoured, he actually mastered the array formation and array core of the entire Thunder Dragon Soul Golem. As long as he had the materials, Kong Shinmu could even replicate the Dragon Soul Golem. Of course, the core materials were bestowed by powerhouses who injected power into them. If Kong Shinmu were to create a Dragon Soul Golem now, it would at most be equivalent to the strength of the Dragon Emperor at his peak, which couldn't be compared to the Dragon Soul Golem in front of him. However, mastering the technique of creating a Dragon Soul Golem was already quite amazing. Perhaps no one, including Yi Yin, would have thought that Kong Shinmu would have such a terrifying ability. Creating a Dragon Soul Golem could only be done by powerhouses of the Dragon Soul Tower, and it was never taught to outsiders. Of course, the Dragon Soul Golem that appeared in front of Kong Shinmu and the others now wasn't the strongest Dragon Soul Golem. Nor was it the core. The core Dragon Soul Golem had the soul of an ancient dragon injected into it, and it was the 18 guardian golems of the entire Dragon Soul Tower. It wasn't something that Kong Shinmu could create. However, perhaps I can let the Black Dragon's consciousness and the Demon God Ancestor's consciousness enter the Dragon Soul Golem? In this way, Kong Shinmu would be able to get rid of those two experts. But at the same time, when Kong Shinmu encountered problems, he couldn't ask them for help. There were pros and cons to consider, so there was no need to think too much about it for now. As Kong Shinmu's devouring power continued to erupt, the lightning attribute Dragon Soul Golem's flaws became more and more severe during the battle. Like a clock tower that could no longer ring its bell, the Dragon Soul Golem's movements became slower and slower, and the attacks it unleashed became weaker and weaker. It even lost its accuracy and could not hit Kong Shinmu at all. All of this indicated that the lightning attribute Dragon Soul Golems had almost been dealt with. In contrast, the Fire Elemental Dragon Soul Golem became even more ferocious at this moment. Endless flames exploded in the arena. The power of the lava condensed from the void and enveloped Kong Shinmu. Kong Shinmu's black dragon body was soon burned into charcoal. Although his muscles and bones were not hurt, he looked extremely wretched on the surface. Yi Yin wasn't idle either. While he was constantly attacking Kong Shinmu with various powers, he also began to attack the lightning attribute Dragon Soul Golem. The lightning attribute Dragon Soul Golem was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Now that it was being attacked by Yi Yin, it naturally couldn't withstand it. Soon, the situation became that Yi Yin kept bombarding the Dragon Soul Golem while it was down. Kong Shinmu, on the other hand, was fighting the Fire Elemental Dragon Soul Golem one-on-one. Kong Shinmu's previous devouring focus was on the lightning attribute Dragon Soul Golem. But now, he directly shifted his focus to the Fire Elemental Dragon Soul Golem. The Fire Elemental Dragon Soul Golem already had the remnants of Kong Shinmu's devouring power. When Yi Yin attacked earlier, he blasted a gap in the two Dragon Soul Golems. Kong Shinmu naturally took the opportunity to submerge his devouring power into the two Dragon Soul Golems. But now, there wasn't much devouring power left in the Fire Elemental Dragon Soul Golem that Kong Shinmu had. The gap in the Dragon Soul Golem was still there. After all, it was just an artifact and not a living thing. Otherwise, with its powerful combat power, it would have automatically recovered. Hence, Kong Shinmu continued to release the devouring power. Due to the devouring power, as Kong Shinmu's combat state got better and better, the Fire Elemental Dragon Soul Golem's power was constantly being devoured by Kong Shinmu, and it began to fall into the same cycle as the lightning attribute Dragon Soul Golem. As long as he could resist the opponent's attack, Kong Shinmu would be invincible. And now, what Kong Shinmu needed the most was a sharp attack. As long as he could break through the opponent's defense and send the devouring power into the opponent's body, Kong Shinmu would enter an invincible state. Chen Xing's arrival provided such an opportunity for Kong Shinmu, and now he only lacked a dragon technique. Of course, he didn't plan to cultivate more dragon techniques now. He planned to directly cultivate a Super Shenshin dragon technique after reaching the Transcendent grade, which would be a truly powerful move. At this moment, the Fire Elemental Dragon Soul Golem was becoming weaker and weaker as Kong Shinmu continued to devour it. Yi Yin didn't forget to release various dragon techniques for Kong Shinmu to devour. In the process, Kong Shinmu became stronger and stronger, and his resistance to various elements reached an astonishing level. He hadn't reached his limit yet, but he was close to it. Yi Yin's power is still a little weak. However, it's already not easy for him to cultivate so many dragon techniques of different attributes at the same time, and each of them is about the same level as my 9th extreme dragon burst. It could only be said that Kong Shinmu's defense was too terrifying. Therefore, although Yi Yin's attack was strong, it still wasn't terrifying in Kong Shinmu's eyes. Yi Yin's attack was completely devoured by Kong Shinmu and turned into resistance to various elements. As time passed, the Thunder Elemental Dragon Soul Golem had long been blasted into pieces by Yi Yin alone. As for the Fire Elemental Dragon Soul Golem, it was already in danger and would soon be devoured by Kong Shinmu until it lost its vitality. This time, the 2 Dragon Soul Demon statues will probably leave 5 crystals each. 5 crystals each? Yi Yin asked tentatively. This division was relatively fair. After all, Yi Yin also contributed a lot. Besides, Yi Yin blasted a hole in the bodies of the 2 Dragon Soul Golems, which was also crucial for Kong Shinmu. Hence, Kong Shinmu nodded in agreement. Kong Shinmu directly gave the crystal left by the Thunder Elemental Dragon Soul Golem to Yi Yin. Chapter 51:10. In the second round of attacks, the Dragon Soul Golems were of the Thunder and Fire attributes. At this moment, Kong Shinmu and Yi Yin joined forces and quickly destroyed the 2 Dragon Soul Golems. However, after they destroyed the 2 Dragon Soul Golems, the prompt from the Dragon Soul Tower made them a little depressed. That was because there were dozens of teams participating in the Dragon Soul Golem challenge this time. When Kong Shinmu and Yi Yin defeated the 2 Dragon Soul Golems, 6 teams had already defeated the 2 Dragon Soul Golems. This is completely normal. Although our battle style is slow, it's more reliable. Yi Yin said with a smile. He could also tell that Kong Shinmu was better at defense now, so as long as they resisted the attacks of the Dragon Soul Golems, victory would belong to them sooner or later. Kong Shinmu shook his head. He wasn't too satisfied with his results. Even though Yi Yin's reasoning wasn't wrong, but he felt that he should have done better. Let's continue. If there are 3 Dragon Soul Golems next, I'll try to kill one of them quickly. Kong Shinmu and Yi Yin discussed their tactics. Yi Yin nodded in agreement. Anyway, the main combat power now was Kong Shinmu, and he would listen to whatever Kong Shinmu said. However, this didn't mean that he didn't have his own opinions. On the contrary, he was usually very assertive and could make his own decisions. But now that he met Kong Shinmu, he could only listen to Kong Shinmu and didn't need to think on his own. Even if he had to think, he would only make some small changes based on Kong Shinmu's opinions. This was because Yi Yin had completely acknowledged Kong Shinmu's strength. Yi Yin trusted Kong Shinmu's judgment very much. Then, 3 Dragon Soul Golems appeared in the entire hall. Just as Kong Shinmu and Yi Yin had guessed, these 3 Dragon Soul Golems were actually equivalent to powerful 4th stage Divine Dragon Warriors. If a 1st stage or 2nd stage Divine Dragon Warrior were to challenge, the 3 Dragon Soul Golems in the 3rd round would probably be 5th stage or even 6th stage Divine Dragon Warriors, right? Jiang Shenwu and Yi Yin looked at each other, and they both sucked in a breath of cold air. It was said that the difficulty of the Dragon Soul Golem challenge was based on the challenger's cultivation level. For example, Jiang Shenwu and Yi Yin were both at the peak of the royal stage. Hence, the Dragon Soul Demon statue that appeared in the 1st round was 1 level stronger than them. It had the strength of a Transcendent God stage too. For the 2nd round, the 2 Dragon Soul Golems with Thunder and Fire attributes were 3rd stage Divine Dragon Soul Golems. And now, the 3 Dragon Soul Golems that appeared were 4th stage Divine Dragon Soul Golems. If Jiang Shenwu had not teamed up with Yi Yin but had teamed up with a level 1 Transcendent God, the difficulty of the challenge they faced would have been even higher. The 2 Dragon Soul Golems in the 2nd round should not be too much of a problem for many teams. However, it was almost the limit. If 2 2nd stage Divine Dragon Warriors teamed up, the 3 Dragon Soul Golems in the 3rd round would all be 6th stage Divine Dragon Warriors. Basically, no one could defeat their opponents. But now, Kong Shinmu and Yi Yin still had a chance. These 3 Dragon Soul Golems have Hurricane, Ice, and Metal attributes. They aren't too strong in terms of attack attributes, so they aren't too difficult to deal with. Of course, their strength is too terrifying. We have to be careful and follow the plan. Kong Shinmu and Yi Yin looked at each other and nodded. The other two-man teams basically reached the end of their journey. In the end, they could only obtain 15 crystals. If they split it between two people, each of them would get 7 or 8 crystals. However, if Kong Shinmu and Yi Yin could defeat the 3 dragon soul golems in front of them, they would receive a total of 30 crystals. Each of them would get 15 crystals. And the things that could be exchanged for would definitely be much better than 7 or 8 crystals. Soon, as the 3 dragon soul golems appeared, Kong Shinmu and Yi Yin attacked the metal attribute dragon soul golem before the 3 dragon soul golems gathered together. This time, Kong Shinmu's dragon god tyrant body technique had completely switched to an offensive stance. Moreover, the battle patterns in Chen Xing's dragon weapon had all been converted into offensive battle patterns. He needed to destroy the mobility of one of the dragon soul golems with Yi Yin as soon as possible. Otherwise, there would be no need to continue this battle. It was also at this moment that Kong Shinmu erupted with his strongest attack. 9th stage Extreme Dragon Blast. At the same time, he also used the 333 Sky Divine Feathers and released 9 layers of attacks. The attack landed on the Dragon Soul Demon statue with a loud rumble. However, Kong Shinmu's attack wasn't too powerful. After all, the 333 Sky Divine Feathers had just entered the battle stage, so it could only release 9 layers of attacks and not the full power of 33 layers. Therefore, Kong Shinmu's attack was like a tickle to the Dragon Soul Golem. However, at the same time, Kong Shinmu had already attracted the attention of the Dragon Soul Golem. The metal attribute Dragon Soul Golem was shining with golden light all over its body. When it was hit by the pitch-black Dragon Blast, this golden light became its most perfect protective power. Kong Shinmu was almost unable to break through this golden light. However, the Dragon Soul Golem immediately unleashed a terrifying killing move at Kong Shinmu. Countless golden rays turned into golden sword lights and condensed into an endless vortex that enveloped Kong Shinmu. This golden swordlight vortex was filled with killing intent and could almost completely obliterate any existence that hadn't reached the transcendent grade. However, Kong Shinmu disappeared at this moment. His black dragon form vanished from the battlefield. This was what he had planned long ago. He had used the space-type ethereal energy to do this. With his current understanding of the spatial attribute void power, he could naturally open up an independent space. Of course, he used the dragon weapon star to open up this independent space. Nothing from the outside world would be able to disturb him while he hid inside. At the same time, Kong Shinmu's devouring power was already spreading in the hall outside. The devouring power that he had left behind began to devour the endless golden swordlight vortex. If he was the only one fighting the opponent, the metal attribute Dragon Soul Golem would only need to stand guard here and Kong Shinmu would have no way of surviving. This was because Kong Shinmu's independent space couldn't be maintained for too long. At least, it couldn't last until the golden swordlight vortex was completely devoured. However, Yi Yin was still here. Right now, Kong Shinmu couldn't switch to a defensive state. Even if Kong Shinmu went all out, he might not be able to withstand a single blow from the opponent. Therefore, this was the only way. With a loud bang, the Dragon Soul Golem began to collapse. The power of the golden sword gleams was something that the Dragon Soul Golem couldn't withstand. Immediately after, Kong Shinmu didn't relax. Instead, he activated the 9th Extreme Roaring Dragon Burst at an even faster speed and unleashed the power of the 33 Heavens Divine Plume. The 33 Heavens Divine Plume couldn't completely unleash 33 attacks yet, but Kong Shinmu was working hard to unleash its power again and again. Therefore, Kong Shinmu's attacks were getting stronger and stronger. Originally, the power of the golden sword gleams that Kong Shinmu had devoured and his own power couldn't completely destroy the metal Dragon Soul Golem. At most, he could only weaken its combat power and destroy more than half of it. It still had the ability to defeat Kong Shinmu. It was still a threat to Kong Shinmu. However, Kong Shinmu's continuous attacks made the metal Dragon Soul Golem lose the possibility of fighting back. This was because, while he was attacking continuously, the devouring power continued to exert force and devoured the core formation inside the Dragon Soul Golem. What it devoured was not power, but it could destroy the core formation. Every time a core formation was destroyed, the power of the Dragon Soul Golem would decrease. With Kong Shinmu's actions, the entire Dragon Soul Golem was collapsing at an astonishing speed. "I can't hold on any longer." At this moment, Yi Yin's voice was heard not far away. Although his situation was very urgent, he did not panic at all. He still appeared to have a card up his sleeve. However, Kong Shinmu also knew that he really couldn't hold on any longer. Yi Yin's defense was ordinary, at least compared to Kong Shinmu's. Facing 2 Dragon Soul Golems that were equivalent to level 4 Supreme God, he really couldn't hold on for long. However, at this moment, Kong Shinmu finally destroyed the Metal Dragon Soul Golem completely. Immediately after, Kong Shinmu flew toward Yi Yin. Next, it was a 2-on-2 situation again. In the previous 2-on-2 situation, Kong Shinmu and Yi Yin had already worked together and successfully killed the Dragon Soul Golem. This time, Kong Shinmu had already killed a stronger Dragon Soul Golem. As long as Kong Shinmu came back to his senses and seized the opportunity, the remaining 2 would not be too troublesome. Everything went smoothly. Half an hour later, the power that Kong Shinmu had devoured erupted once again and integrated with his 9 ultimate Dragon Blast. The terrifying power directly shattered the Ice Attribute Dragon Soul Golem into several pieces. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, he completely destroyed the Hurricane Attribute Dragon Soul Golem. These 2 Dragon Soul Golems were a little difficult for Kong Shinmu to deal with, mainly because the defense of these 2 Dragon Soul Golems was very strong. Compared to the Metal Attribute Dragon Soul Golem, their attack power was also weaker. Therefore, Kong Shinmu had to devour more power to be able to destroy them. In the process, Yi Yin kept harassing the 2 Dragon Soul Golems. To be honest, without Yi Yin's cooperation, Kong Shinmu would not have been able to defeat the 3 Dragon Soul Golems on his own. Although Yi Yin did not have that kind of decisive effect, he had bought too much time for Kong Shinmu and created too many opportunities for Kong Shinmu. Without Yi Yin, Kong Shinmu would not have been able to resist the attacks of 3 Dragon Soul Golems at the same time, or even 2. The key was to think of a way to counterattack while resisting the attacks. In any case, Kong Shinmu could not do it alone. Therefore, Yi Yin had indeed helped Kong Shinmu a lot. In the end, the 3 Dragon Soul Golems left behind 15 crystal crystals. Of these 15 crystal crystals, Kong Shinmu naturally obtained 7, while Yi Yin obtained 8. In addition to the 15 crystals that had been distributed previously, everyone had 15 crystal crystals. With regards to this distribution, Yi Yin felt that he had taken advantage of the situation, because he was only a support in the battle. Chapter 51:12. Kong Shinmu and Yi Yin had a good time working together. All in all, Yi Yin respected him. After all, the main combat power of their cooperation was still Kong Shinmu. However, sometimes, Yi Yin would let Kong Shinmu take advantage of him. That was why they could work together until now. As for the other teams, after Kong Shinmu and Yi Yin destroyed the 3 Dragon Soul Demon statues together, the Dragon Soul Tower's notification came. They were the first 2-man team to destroy the 3 Dragon Soul Demon statues. Kong Shinmu did not know how the others were doing. However, when they had just defeated 2 Dragon Soul Demon statues, their ranking was at the bottom. Now that they had defeated 3 Dragon Soul Demon statues, they were actually ranked first. Obviously, in the 3rd round of the challenge of the Dragon Soul Golems, many teams were either too weak or couldn't beat them. Or there was some conflict within the team. No matter what, Kong Shinmu and Yi Yin had gained quite a lot. Next, it's the Dragon Soul Demon statues of the 5th level, right? And I'm afraid there are a total of 4 of them. Kong Shinmu said to Yi Yin. His words were rather solemn. Generally speaking, it was almost impossible for Kong Shinmu to defeat a 5th-level opponent, and it was even more difficult for Yi Yin to defeat them. Even if Kong Shinmu could use the power of the Starry Sky, it would be difficult for him to defeat 4 Dragon Soul Demon statues of this level. Not to mention, it was impossible to use the power of the Starry Sky in the Dragon Soul Tower. Soon, after Kong Shinmu said that, the 2 of them saw 4 Dragon Soul Demon statues appearing around them. Each of the 4 Dragon Soul Demon statues had the power of a 5th-level transcendent. However, to their surprise, the 4 Dragon Soul Demon statues didn't attack them as a group. Instead, only one of them moved. All 4 Dragon Soul Golems have been activated, but only one Dragon Soul Golem is attacking us. Could it be that they're going to take turns fighting us? Kong Shinmu's guess was very likely, and in the current situation, this was the most likely possibility. It took time to activate the Dragon Soul Demon statue. There was some time between the 1st, 2nd, and third rounds to give the dragon warriors who challenged the Dragon Soul Golem time to prepare. In the fourth round, all 4 Dragon Soul Golems were activated at the same time, and no one knew when the second one would attack. Yi-In, let's do this. You guard against the 3 Dragon Soul Golems around, and I'll deal with this activated Dragon Soul Golem. How does that sound? Kong Shinmu said in a deep voice. Can you do it alone? Yi-In was a little worried, but he was also looking forward to it. It should be possible. Let's give it a try. Kong Shinmu nodded and said. After all, his current defensive ability was indeed tyrannical, and after the Dragon Soul Golem was activated, it had the power of the Earth attribute. Previously, he had devoured a lot of Yi-Yin's Earth attribute dragon skill power, and his resistance to the Earth attribute had reached the peak. Therefore, he could give it a try. Attack! Jiang Shenwu immediately made his move and swept towards the Dragon Soul Demon statue. As he attacked, Yi-In did not stay idle either. Instead, he began to cast some defensive formations around Kong Shinmu and the Dragon Soul Golem. Although Yi-In really could not resist the Dragon Soul Golem of level 5 Transcendent God in a head-on fight, the other party would probably be able to kill Yi-In in an instant. However, he now had time to set up formations to fight against it. Perhaps that was the main point of this round of Dragon Soul Golems challenge. It was basically impossible to deal with 4 Dragon Soul Golems at the same time. After all, the cultivation level of these 4 Dragon Soul Golems was 5 levels higher than the Dragon Warrior who was participating in the challenge. If the challenger was at level 1 Transcendent God, then the 4 Dragon Soul Golems in this round should be terrifying existences at level 6 Transcendent God. Let the challenger fight 1 against 4? That was simply impossible. Therefore, the 4 Dragon Soul Golems were activated one by one to give them some buffer time. Most importantly, they could use this buffer time to set up formations. In this way, they might be able to fight against the 4 Dragon Soul Golems. Based on Kong Shinmu and Yi Yin's cultivation, if they were proficient in some formations, whether it was defensive or offensive, they should be able to fight against an opponent at level 5 Transcendent God. Of course, if this went on for a long time, they would definitely be broken through by the opponent. However, it was enough to be able to resist. Kong Shinmu did not think that there was anyone who could defeat 4 Dragon Soul Golems that surpassed him by 5 levels. However, there was no doubt that he had to give it a try. He wanted to get first place in this competition. In that case, even if the Dragon Soul Golems didn't count towards his points, he had to give it a try. The attack of a level 5 Transcendent God was already very terrifying to Kong Shinmu. The Earth attribute Dragon Soul Golems, even if it was just a casual attack, would be able to cause countless bone-deep wounds on Kong Shinmu's black dragon body. Dragon blood spurted wildly in the void. However, Kong Shinmu's devouring power allowed him to continuously recover from his injuries, and the recovery speed was extremely fast. Of course, it wasn't just because of the devouring power. There was also the recovery power of the Dark Dragon Filth Mastery skill, which could speed up the recovery speed of his injuries and strength. If not for that, Kong Shinmu would have been seriously injured in one move and wouldn't be able to take it. But now, Kong Shinmu had blocked 7 to 8 attacks from the opponent. Moreover, in these 7 to 8 attacks, Kong Shinmu's devouring power kept on devouring the opponent's attack energy. Luckily, this Dragon Soul Golem has Earth attribute energy. The Earth attribute's defense is stronger but its attack is slightly weaker, so I can block it, Kong Shinmu thought to himself. However, the consequence of this was that if Kong Shinmu wanted to completely destroy this Dragon Soul Golem, he would need an even stronger power to kill it. He needed to devour more than 10 attacks from the opponent. This brought a lot of pressure to Kong Shinmu. No matter how strong his recovery ability was, it was impossible for him to recover completely after every attack. So now, his injuries were already very serious. He couldn't use the devouring power to heal his injuries. In that case, he would exhaust his attack energy and it would be even more difficult for him to defeat that Dragon Soul Golem. So now, Kong Shinmu was almost using his limit. In the end, he even used the Brilliant Ruby Stone. The power of the Brilliant Ruby Stone was naturally able to block the opponent's attack. Moreover, Kong Shinmu's devouring power followed closely behind and devoured the opponent's attack energy again. After gathering the power of 10 attacks, Kong Shinmu finally integrated it into the 9 Ultimate Dragon Explosion. Chapter 51-13. Kong Shinmu single-handedly challenged the 5th level Earth Dragon Soul Demon statue. In the end, he actually exploded with one move and shattered the Earth Dragon Soul Demon statue. As the Earth Attribute Dragon Soul Demon statue crumbled, Yi Yin was dumbfounded. He really did not expect Kong Shinmu to be able to deal with such an existence alone. Wasn't this a little too terrifying? One had to know that Kong Shinmu was only a peak Emperor level. However, this Earth Dragon Soul Demon statue had the strength of a 5th level Transcendent. Although the Earth Dragon Soul Demon statue's attribute was restrained by Kong Shinmu, it was mainly because its defense was stronger and its attack was slightly weaker. Hence, it was very easy for Kong Shinmu to resist. As long as he continued to resist, he would devour the opponent's power and condense it. Then, he would be able to shatter the Dragon Soul Demon statue. However, it was still a 5th level Transcendent. Even if its attack was slightly weaker, it was still a 4th level Transcendent. If its defense was stronger, it would definitely surpass an ordinary 5th level Transcendent and might even be close to the 6th level Transcendent. Such an existence. Even some 3rd level Transcendent geniuses would find it difficult to defeat it. However, Kong Shinmu relied on his own strength to shatter the Earth Dragon Soul Demon statue. It was too terrifying. Yi Yin was shocked. Of course, he also knew that this was related to Kong Shinmu absorbing and devouring his various attributes. Otherwise, it would have been very difficult for Kong Shinmu to resist the opponent's attack. No matter what, the first Dragon Soul Demon statue had been destroyed. Then the two of them felt the other Dragon Soul Demon statue around them move at the same time. Next, it was even more difficult for Kong Shinmu to defend. After all, the attacks of the other 3 Dragon Soul Demon statues were getting stronger and stronger. It was not the Earth Dragon Soul Demon statue that focused on defense, so its destructive power was extremely strong. When Kong Shinmu was defending the checkpoint previously, he couldn't resist the attacks of this level for long. Fortunately, there was only one activated Dragon Soul Golem now, so he only needed to face one type of attack at the same time. That was why he was able to deal with the situation more easily than when he was defending the checkpoint. At the very least, he wouldn't be bombarded by the opponent's attacks to the point of instantly collapsing. Previously, he had been besieged at the defense checkpoint. There were attacks from the 5th level of the Transcendent God from all directions. Kong Shinmu did not even have the time to devour them. But now, he had a way to devour half of the attack's power for his own use, and he only needed to block the remaining half. Even so, Kong Shinmu was surrounded by perils. Even the Dark Dragon Filth Mastery and the power of devouring couldn't keep him in a complete state, because the opponent's attacks were too strong. Kong Shinmu couldn't even fully activate his devouring power. The power he devoured was only 30% to 40% of his opponent's attack power because his devouring power would be obstructed by his opponent. The other party's strength was too great. This was the true power of a 5th stage Transcendent God. However, Kong Shinmu still blocked it in the end. He still used the power of the Heaven-Deficient Demonic Dragon of Ice and Fire. The power of the Heaven-Deficient allowed him to change the flow of time between him and the Dragon Soul Golem. Once his opponent attacked, Kong Shinmu would have enough time to devour his opponent's power. However, because the Dragon Soul Golem was so powerful, Kong Shinmu needed to consume more power to change the flow of time around it. After blocking 2 attacks, Kong Shinmu's Heaven-Deficient power was exhausted. However, the power of these 2 attacks didn't threaten me at all. Instead, I devoured them completely. It's time. Kong Shinmu launched a counterattack. After a loud bang, the Dragon Soul Golem was smashed into pieces by him. After this one there were 2 more. Unfortunately, Kong Shinmu's Heaven-Deficient power was almost exhausted. Devour! The smashed Dragon Soul Golem was quickly devoured by Kong Shinmu's devouring power. Then, its power was converted into Heaven-Deficient power in Kong Shinmu's devouring space. The Heaven-Deficient power that had been used up previously was now fully recovered. This allowed Kong Shinmu's injuries to continue to heal. It's really a tag team battle. Kong Shinmu discovered that after the second Dragon Soul Golem was smashed, the third Dragon Soul Golem was unsealed and flew directly toward him. However, he didn't know that this level was not only about defeating the opponent. Instead, he only needed to resist for a certain amount of time to pass. The 4 Dragon Soul Golems would attack one after another. Eventually, all 4 of them would attack together. If he could resist for a certain amount of time, he would be considered to have passed the level and obtained 5 crystals. In total, 4 Dragon Soul Golems would give him 20 crystals. However, Kong Shinmu used the terrifying devouring power to destroy the Dragon Soul Golem. This could be said to be extremely terrifying. But for Kong Shinmu, this couldn't be more normal. On the contrary, Yi Yin sensed that something was wrong. He knew very well that if the 4 Dragon Soul Golems were to engage in a tag team battle, no one could defeat them except for a heaven-defying existence like Kong Shinmu. They would even have to use all their strength to resist the opponent's attack. I'm afraid this level is supposed to be very simple. Unfortunately, Kong Shinmu seems to have misunderstood. Yi Yin was a little puzzled. But since he misunderstood, so be it. The best defense was to get rid of those Dragon Soul Golems. He believed that the reward would definitely not be too bad. Soon, the 3rd and 4th Dragon Soul Golems were activated one after another, but they were still directly killed by Kong Shinmu. As long as Kong Shinmu couldn't be killed instantly, Kong Shinmu could turn the tables in the end. This was the terrifying part of the devouring power. However, this was almost Kong Shinmu's limit, and he had made some preparations in advance. Otherwise, Kong Shinmu might have been killed instantly. Even now, he was still in danger and needed Yi Yin's support from the side. Many times, when Kong Shinmu was about to be unable to hold on, it was Yi Yin who took action to buy some time for Kong Shinmu. As long as he could buy some time, Kong Shinmu could devour more of the opponent's attack power and recover more of his injuries and strength, so that he could accumulate the power to defeat the Dragon Soul Golems. In the end, the 4 Dragon Soul Golems were all smashed by Kong Shinmu one by one. The 4 Dragon Soul Golems in this level were smashed to pieces by Kong Shinmu's attack. However, Kong Shinmu didn't use his own power. Instead, he mainly gathered the power of the Dragon Soul Golems and gathered it to the limit to attack the Dragon Soul Golems. This could be regarded as a strategy, but if it were someone else, even those dragon martial artists who had the talent to counterattack, they wouldn't be able to do this at all. Because the opponent's strength was too great. The talent to counterattack definitely couldn't withstand this level of power. Chapter 51:14. As the 4 Dragon Soul Demon statues were smashed into pieces by Kong Shinmu, the place fell silent all of a sudden. Kong Shinmu and Yi Yin stared at the 2 Dragon Soul Demon statues left on the wall and were a little nervous. Based on the previous situation, the last 2 Dragon Soul Demon statues were very likely to be existences on the 6th level of the Transcendent God stage. They couldn't contend with such a level of strength at all. However, after waiting for a long time, the 2 of them realized that the 2 Dragon Soul Demon statues didn't move like the Dragon Soul Demon statues that had been unsealed before. Could it be that the challenge of the Dragon Soul Demon statues has ended? Kong Shinmu thought to himself. However, he didn't get any crystals when the 4 Dragon Soul Demon statues were smashed into pieces just now. What exactly was going on? Kong Shinmu and Yi Yin were a little confused. But soon, the voice from the Dragon Soul Tower sounded in their heads. Congratulations to the 2 of you for challenging the Dragon Soul Demon statues so far. Next, the 2 of you don't need to defeat your opponents. You just need to comprehend during the battle. Whatever you comprehend will belong to the 2 of you. Kong Shinmu and Yi Yin's expressions changed slightly when they heard this. They didn't need to defeat their opponents anymore. Could it be that it was the same just now? Unfortunately, the voice in their heads didn't tell them what happened just now. Kong Shinmu only realized that after the voice sounded, a total of 20 crystals appeared in front of him. There were a total of 35 crystals in addition to the 15 crystals that he had obtained previously. I have 10 crystals here. Yi Yin's voice sounded quickly. I have 20 crystals here. Kong Shinmu replied. Both of them exchanged glances and nodded. It could be seen that the test of the Dragon Soul Tower wasn't just a test of their combat power, but also a test of their character and cooperation. If it were someone else, Yi Yin would definitely be envious. After all, they had passed the test together. Why did Kong Shinmu have 20 while Yi Yin only had 10? Although the main force was Kong Shinmu, Yi Yin had also contributed a lot. Without Yi Yin, Kong Shinmu wouldn't have been able to resist the attacks of the 4 Dragon Soul Golems. However, Yi Yin felt that it didn't matter. To begin with, he wasn't particularly concerned about the rewards of the Dragon Soul Tower. He was the kind of person who would take whatever he could and forget about it if he couldn't. Now that he had fought with Kong Shinmu all the way until now, it was already quite good. Although he was 10 crystals less than Kong Shinmu in the end, he was quite satisfied. If it weren't for Kong Shinmu, He wouldn't have been able to persist until now if he had formed a team with others. He had only helped Kong Xinmu block some of the attacks. The main pressure was still borne by Kong Xinmu himself. Therefore, he was very clear about the principle of the capable getting more. Since Kong Xinmu contributed more than him, it was normal for him to get more crystals. The Dragon Soul Tower was definitely very fair. What can I exchange for with 35 crystals? Kong Xinmu thought to himself. As he thought so, a form and options appeared before him. He was a little surprised. The rewards could be exchanged now? Weren't there still 2 more Dragon Soul Golems? However, Kong Xinmu didn't think too much about it. He realized that there were too many things that could be exchanged for crystals. First of all, 5 crystals could be exchanged for a high-grade Super Divine Dragon Technique or a Heaven-grade Super Divine Dragon Weapon. This meant that Kong Xinmu could actually exchange for 7 high-level Super Dragon Techniques? Or 7 Heaven-level Super Dragon Weapons. Of course, Kong Xinmu didn't lack dragon weapons now. The formless weapon, Chen Xing, was far superior to all Super Dragon weapons. Only a formless weapon like him could compare. Therefore, Kong Xinmu directly set his sights on high-level Super Dragon Techniques. 1 crystal could be exchanged for a low-level Super Dragon Technique. 2 crystals could be exchanged for a mid-level Super Dragon Technique. However, high-level Super Dragon Techniques required at least 5 crystals to be exchanged. To Kong Xinmu, these dragon techniques were more precious. After all, apart from this channel, he would have to pay a considerable price if he wanted to obtain Super Dragon Techniques through other channels. The Transcendent Divine Dragon Martial Technique was not the Holy Spirit Dragon Martial Technique. Super Dragon Techniques of the same level were worth more than a Holy Dragon Techniques by more than 100 times. A high-level Holy Dragon Technique might only cost 5,000 gold dragon coins. However, a high-level Super Dragon Technique could be sold at the 5 Extremes Mysterious Ice Holy Land for at least 500,000 gold dragon coins, and there might not be that many to choose from. But now, in front of Kong Xinmu was a considerable number of Super Dragon Techniques to choose from. I just happen to need Super Dragon Techniques. Although I can't cultivate them now, I can start cultivating and upgrading them when I reach the Transcending God level. It wasn't a bad idea to exchange for some now. Soon, Kong Xinmu was the first to choose. Every Holy Land had a high-grade Transcendent Divine Dragon Martial Technique, but it was not very comprehensive. Only the Dragon Soul Sacred Tower had records of every type of Transcendent Divine Dragon Martial Technique. First, I need a Body Tempering Super Dragon Technique, an offensive one, and a defensive one. Kong Xinmu thought to himself. It should be noted that the Ultra Divine Dragon Martial Techniques that could be exchanged here were not all for the 5 crystals. Kong Xinmu saw some on the list that required 10 or even 15 crystals to exchange for high-grade Super Dragon Techniques. That was because some of the Super Divine Dragon Martial Techniques required some cultivation resources to cultivate. For example, the materials that Kong Xinmu needed to cultivate the Divine Dragon Tyrant Body Art had been exchanged for by Kong Xinmu using a lot of resources. In the Dragon Soul Holy Tower, when one exchanged for the Super Mystical Dragon Martial Technique, the cultivation resources needed for cultivation would be included. Of course, those cultivation resources weren't free. They were directly exchanged with crystals and could not be exchanged individually. There are quite a lot of types of body tempering dragon techniques. Kong Xinmu quickly saw many body tempering dragon techniques on the list. Furthermore, they were the most expensive among all types of dragon techniques. That was because, if one wanted to cultivate body-tempering dragon martial skills, these high-level Super Divine Dragon martial skills would require a set of cultivation resources. Therefore they required the most crystals. To Kong Xinmu, there was no doubt that the body-tempering dragon technique was the one that would increase his strength the most. Therefore, Kong Xinmu was only staring at the body-tempering dragon technique. Chapter 51-15. Kong Xinmu quickly picked a few body-refining dragon martial skills. He could be said to be familiar with body-refining dragon martial skills, but he could also not be said to be unfamiliar with them. Although he had cultivated quite a few body-refining dragon martial skills, he did not have much research on the other body-refining dragon martial skills that he had not cultivated. Therefore, it was not easy to choose a body-refining dragon-type martial skill. Primordial Dragon Body. The dragon martial skill and body-refining cultivation resources required a total of 15 crystals. Heaven's Might Tyrant Body Technique. The dragon martial skill and cultivation resources required a total of 20 crystals. Divine Dipper Dragon Technique. This body-refining dragon-type martial skill required 25 crystals. Kong Shin-mu looked at the body-refining dragon martial skill and could not help but feel a headache. Wasn't the consumption too high? Although there were many dragon warriors who practiced body-refining dragon martial arts techniques in the entire Dragon God clan's great world, it shouldn't be common. Why was it so expensive? However, the most Kong Shin-mu could accept was 25 crystals. After all, in addition to the body-refining dragon martial skill, he still needed to leave 10 crystals to exchange for attack and defense-type super divine dragon martial skills. This Divine Dipper Dragon technique seems to be very good. The introduction below the Divine Dipper Dragon technique was very simple. After successfully cultivating it, one could automatically absorb the surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth and turn it into Divine Dipper armor. The defensive ability was quite strong, and most importantly, this Divine Dipper Dragon technique could be used as a supplementary attack dragon martial skill. The body-protecting divine aura that was cultivated could be used to attach to the attacking dragon martial skill, making the attacking dragon martial skill's might even stronger. The Divine Dipper Dragon technique is very strong in defense, but its attack is not weak either. After cultivating it, the strength of the divine dragon body will also increase. Kong Shin-mu felt that this was very good. After comparing it with other body-refining dragon martial skills, Kong Shin-mu decided to cultivate this Divine Dipper Dragon technique. High-level super divine dragon martial skills were extremely rare. Most importantly, the Dragon Soul Holy Tower had already prepared all the materials needed to cultivate the Divine Dipper Dragon technique. When Kong Shin-mu decided to exchange for the Divine Bulwark Dragon technique, the 25 crystals in his hand disappeared. In its place was a secret manual that recorded the Divine Gale Dragon technique and a storage ring. Kong Shin-mu could sense that there were many precious cultivation resources in the storage ring. Divine Astral Soul Essence. The God Wind was not a power that could be casually cultivated. Otherwise, it would not be a transcendent dragon martial skill. The so-called Divine Shield of the Divine Shield Dragon incantation came from a certain forbidden land in the Dragon God's great world. It was a forbidden land between heaven and earth, and even supreme experts could not enter it easily. If one were to enter carelessly, it was very likely that one would encounter danger. Therefore, the God Shield was one of the top powers in the world. Although the divine aura power cultivated by cultivating the Divine Aura Dragon incantation was not as strong as the divine aura in the Forbidden Land, it was still quite terrifying compared to the dragon martial artists of the same level. The Divine Shield could be used for both offense and defense. Most importantly, it did not require the cultivator to constantly pay attention to it. The God Shield would always be around the cultivator. The Divine Aura Dragon incantation has extremely strong defense. According to the information I have now, if I successfully cultivate the Divine Aura Dragon incantation, it would be equivalent to cultivating the Divine Dragon Tyrant body art to the dragon level. If I cultivate the Divine Aura Dragon incantation to the earth level, I'm afraid it would be similar to the sacred level of the Divine Dragon Tyrant body art. If I cultivate the Divine Aura Dragon incantation to the extreme sacred level, what kind of power would that be? Kong Shin-mu found it hard to imagine. Of course, the Divine Aura Dragon incantation also had its weaknesses. This body-refining dragon martial skill did not increase the defensive strength of the Divine Dragon body too much. It was only similar to the Divine Dragon Tyrant body art. But most importantly, the cultivated God Astral Soul incantation. The God Astral Soul could be continuously superimposed around the body. The upper limit of the superposition was the level of the Divine Aura Dragon martial artist's cultivation. The defensive strength of the God Astral Soul incantation was extremely terrifying. It was several times or even more than 10 times stronger than the defensive dragon martial skills of the same level. However, the disadvantage was also obvious. The God Astral Soul could be scattered. If the opponent continued to attack, they could gradually scatter the God Astral Soul incantation. That way, the defense of the God Astral Soul incantation would not be so strong, and it would gradually weaken. After that, if the God Astral Soul incantation wanted to recover, it would require a relatively long period of rest. Of course, this was not a big problem for Kong Shin-mu. He could completely devour the opponent's power and recover the God Astral Soul incantation. This way, his God Astral Soul incantation would exist almost forever. That defensive strength could be said to be at its peak. If the current Kong Shinmu cultivated the Divine Aura Dragon incantation, as long as he cultivated it to the dragon level, it would no longer be a pipe dream for him to block the attack of a level 6 Supreme God. It would be possible. The key was that if the opponent wanted to scatter the God Astral Soul incantation, it would depend on the strength of the cultivator's physical body. The stronger the divine dragon body of a dragon martial artist, the stronger the God Astral Soul incantation. It would be harder to scatter it. And now, there was no need to say more about the strength of Kong Shinmu's divine dragon body. He was definitely the most terrifying among the dragon martial artists of the same level. No matter how strong the defense of others was, they could only use the defensive dragon martial skills. Only Kong Shinmu relied solely on the body-refining dragon martial skills to defend. With just his physical body, Kong Shinmu had already surpassed the defense of most dragon martial artists of the same level. He even surpassed some Supreme God stage powerhouses. This was extremely rare. This was because he had cultivated too many body-refining dragon martial skills. Although there were many body-refining dragon martial skills that Kong Shinmu no longer took to heart, those body-refining dragon martial skills still passively strengthened his divine dragon body. Putting the effects aside, the few body-refining dragon martial skills added together could provide a very strong defense for Kong Shinmu. No matter what, the Divine Aura Dragon incantation was more in line with Kong Shinmu's expectations. Especially the God Astral Soul incantation, which could be combined with his own devouring power, could never be scattered. That was the true terrifying defense. Although the God Astral Soul could be scattered, its strongest point was its strong defense. Its defense was more than 10 times stronger than the defense of the same level dragon martial skills. Generally, if one did not encounter an opponent that was too strong, it would take a very long time to scatter the God Astral Soul incantation. And now, Kong Shinmu could use devouring power to restore the God Astral Soul. This was the most terrifying part. No matter what, the opponent could not shatter the God Astral Soul incantation. Then, when Kong Shinmu faced some opponents, as long as the opponent did not surpass him by too much, he would always have the defense of the God Astral Soul incantation. It was equivalent to an absolute defense. No matter what, it was impossible to defeat Kong Shinmu. Chapter 51:16. New God of All Times has won. 3 million words. Recommended reading. It's a pity that the Great God Dragon technique is a super mystical dragon technique. I can't cultivate it now. Kong Shinmu thought to himself. It was a pity. He was a peak stage emperor-level dragon inheritance blood, so unless he encountered some special circumstances, he really couldn't cultivate the Great God Dragon technique. Then, he began to choose the next super mystical dragon technique. One was an offensive dragon technique, and the other was a defensive dragon technique. Originally, Kong Shinmu had cultivated a body-refining dragon technique, so the defensive dragon technique wasn't very effective. Basically, he didn't need to cultivate it anymore. However, Kong Shinmu wanted to improve his defense to the extreme. Now, he didn't have many active defensive methods. He only had a brilliant gem. But there were too many restrictions on the brilliant gem. Hence, Jiang Xinwu was thinking that if he could cultivate a defensive dragon martial technique, even if its defensive ability was not as strong as the brilliant ruby stone, it would still be able to continuously execute it. It would also be able to increase his defensive ability. Therefore, he chose to focus on a defensive dragon martial skill. Canopy of Despair. This was the defensive dragon technique that Kong Shinmu chose. It required 5 crystals to exchange for. This was a top-notch super divine dragon martial technique, but its price was only 5 crystals. That was because it was a top-notch super divine dragon martial technique recorded here. If one wanted to cultivate it to its peak, they didn't need to obtain this dragon martial technique, but rather, they needed to be more compatible with the dragon martial technique. It didn't mean that a dragon martial artist would be able to obtain the strongest super mystical dragon technique in the Dragon Soul Holy Tower with just 5 crystals. If the dragon technique was not compatible with one's body, then one might not be able to cultivate to the Supreme Sage realm. As everyone knew, cultivating a dragon technique to the heaven grade was not the true peak. Above the heaven grade, there was the Sage and Supreme Sage realms. However, not everyone could cultivate all of the dragon martial skills to the Saint level and Ultimate Saint level. This required a certain degree of compatibility between the dragon martial artist and the dragon technique. The heaven grade could be achieved through hard work. Any dragon martial artist that cultivates any dragon martial skill would be able to cultivate the dragon martial skill to the heaven level. However, the saint level and the extreme saint level, these two realms allowed one to display the might of the dragon martial technique by several times. If one wanted to cultivate it, they would have to rely on compatibility. Therefore, this selection was a very important matter for all the dragon martial artists, and it also depended on luck. No one knew what type of dragon martial technique they were most compatible with. On the other hand, Kong Xinmu wasn't worried at all. Since he had the ability to devour, even if this dragon martial technique was not compatible with him, he could still find a dragon martial artist who had cultivated this dragon martial technique to its peak, consult them, and use the devouring method to improve. Of course, now that Kong Xinmu had the devouring power, he would basically be compatible with any dragon martial technique. It was impossible for him to not be compatible. Therefore, he could choose as he pleased. The Desperate Canopy was the defensive dragon martial skill he had chosen. This defensive ultra-divine dragon martial skill was able to condense a defensive barrier. This defensive barrier was the Despair Canopy, a large-scale defensive barrier. Although its defensive capabilities were not particularly outstanding, the key was, this Despair Canopy could shrink and expand. By shrinking, he could defend a smaller area, but his defensive capabilities would become stronger. If he expanded, the defensive range would become larger, but the corresponding defensive capabilities would be slightly weakened. This was what Kong Xinmu valued. This defensive dragon martial skill would be rather flexible when used. If it was a large-scale battle, he could directly expand the Despair Canopy to block most of the opponent's attacks. But to Kong Xinmu, the most important thing was to reduce the defensive range. This way, he could increase his defensive capabilities to the maximum, and to a certain extent, he could increase his own defensive capabilities to a terrifying level. What he was most afraid of now was being killed in one hit. Therefore, with the Despair Canopy, he could take the right approach and defend against the opponent's strongest attack. This way, he could prevent himself from being killed in one hit, and his safety was also higher. Moreover, the Despair Canopy was a dark attribute dragon martial skill. For Kong Xinmu, it was originally a rather compatible existence, and it would be easier to cultivate. After choosing the Despair Canopy, Kong Xinmu finally chose the offensive-type dragon martial skill. Super Divine Dragon Martial Skill. Kong Xinmu should only be able to cultivate these three types of dragon martial skills. As for the other types, he would probably not dabble in them. At most, he would cultivate other body-tempering dragon martial skills. But it was not necessary, it was just icing on the cake, and could not make him stronger. Therefore, under normal circumstances, Kong Xinmu would not consider more. Therefore, this offensive dragon martial skill had to be carefully chosen. There are the most types of offensive dragon martial skills. I want something that is more suitable for me, and it's best if it can become stronger and stronger in battle. For example, the 33 Heavens Divine Plume, a dragon weapon's brilliant material, could be continuously strengthened in battle, and finally achieve the effect of 33 layers of attacks. This was rather useful for Kong Xinmu. Many times, his defensive capabilities had reached a certain level, but the strength of his attacks was not enough. But this kind of increasingly strong offensive dragon martial skill was very suitable for Kong Xinmu. Therefore, Kong Xinmu headed in this direction and began to choose Extreme Destructive Heavenly Might Dragon Soul. Very quickly, Kong Xinmu found an offensive dragon martial skill that was suitable for him. Extreme Destructive Heavenly Might Dragon Soul. This Extreme Destructive Heavenly Might Dragon Soul's introduction was very simple, but it was very suitable for Kong Xinmu. When this dragon martial skill is used, it can create a dragon soul. This dragon soul can continuously attack the opponent, and the dragon soul will become stronger and stronger in battle, and can absorb the power of the surrounding heaven and earth, as well as the power released by both sides in battle. This is similar to my devouring power, which can devour the opponent's power to counterattack. If I use the devouring power to support this extreme destructive heavenly might dragon soul, wouldn't it be very strong? Kong Xinmu thought in his heart. He was looking forward to this extreme destructive heavenly might dragon soul. It was a pity that when the extreme destructive heavenly might dragon soul was used at the beginning, its power was not strong. It could not even be compared to the 9th stage extreme Dao dragon explosion. This dragon martial skill could only display its true power when facing experts. As the battle progressed, its power would become stronger and stronger. Divine Astral Dragon Technique, Despair Canopy. Extreme Destructive Heavenly Might Dragon Soul. These were the 3 types of dragon martial skills that Kong Shinmu chose this time. And this consumed all 35 crystals that he obtained this time. Of course, crystals could be exchanged for a lot of other things other than dragon martial skills, but for Kong Shinmu, it was not as great as exchanging for dragon martial skills, not to mention that other things could be bought in the market. Chapter 51:17. Hence, there wasn't much of a problem for Kong Shinmu to choose the dragon techniques. In any case, other cultivation resources were not too difficult to obtain for him. Even some of the precious materials that appeared on the list weren't too interesting for Kong Shinmu. After all, they weren't top-notch to Kong Shinmu. His formless weapon, Chen Xing, needed brilliant materials, and it had to be top-grade brilliant materials. Most importantly, he didn't see any materials that were useful to him on the list, so he gave up right away. Just like that, Kong Shinmu chose the body-refining dragon technique, the holy dragon technique, the defense-type dragon technique, the desperate canopy, and the offense-type dragon technique, the extreme destructive heavenly might dragon soul. These 3 dragon martial techniques were all super divine dragon martial techniques, and they were the highest quality super divine dragon martial techniques. Once one cultivated to the supreme stage, one's combat strength would increase tremendously. Unfortunately, Kong Shinmu couldn't cultivate in Xueqi yet. After all, the super divine dragon technique, as the name suggested, could only be cultivated after reaching the supreme stage. Shortly after, when Kong Shinmu was done with his selection, Yi Yin was also done. The 2 of them gathered together, and both appraised the remaining 2 dragon soul devilish statues with bewilderment in their eyes. The remaining 2 dragon soul demon statues didn't require them to defeat them, and they only needed to comprehend them in battle. But what exactly did they need to comprehend? The 2 of them were dumbfounded. After all, they had no prior experience at all. The dragon warriors who came to challenge the dragon soul demon statues didn't mention what they had to do for this stage. It was conceivable that there weren't many dragon warriors who could defeat the 4 dragon soul demon statues. Not to mention, even if they could reach this stage, they wouldn't be able to spread the news easily. Hence, Kong Shinmu and Yi Yin could only rely on their own means to research. Soon, the 2 dragon soul demon statues came to life. Even though the dragon soul holy tower reminded them not to fight them, Kong Shinmu and Yi Yin were still vigilant. Shortly after, they realized that the 2 dragon soul golems didn't attack them. Instead, they actually flew to the center of the stage, and the 2 dragon soul demon statues actually faced each other, as if they were about to fight. What's going on? Could it be that the dragon soul golems are going to fight one another so that we can learn something from them? Kong Shinmu guessed. He and Yi Yin looked at each other and saw the same guess in each other's eyes. I wonder if that's the case? Immediately afterwards, Kong Shinmu discovered that when the power of the 2 dragon soul demon statues gathered, an array formation seemed to appear in the hall. This formation enveloped Kong Shinmu and Yi Yin. What formation is this? Kong Shinmu frowned slightly. If they were in the outside world, he could directly ask the Black Dragon's consciousness and the Demon God Ancestor's consciousness. But now, he couldn't tell what kind of formation it was. I don't know. I've never seen the structure of this formation. Yi Yin had done a lot of research on formations, but at this moment, he really couldn't figure out the specific use of this formation. At this moment, the majestic and sacred voice of the Dragon Soul Holy Tower directly appeared in their minds. This is the Chosen Spirit Formation. In this formation, you can enhance your perception and compatibility with the power of heaven and earth. You can even cultivate dragon martial skills beyond your level. Of course, the Heaven-Chosen Yuan Spirit Formation can only last for 2 hours. Within these 2 hours, how much you can comprehend the ultra-divine dragon martial skill you've chosen will depend on your own luck. The Chosen Spirit Formation could only last for 2 hours. When Kong Shinmu and Yi Yin heard this, they were somewhat shocked. The Chosen Spirit Formation was actually such a terrifying formation. It sounded like it could allow the dragon martial artists in the formation to cultivate dragon martial skills beyond their level. In other words, now, Kong Shinmu and Yi Yin could both cultivate the super divine dragon martial skill. Amazing. Kong Shinmu didn't expect it to be so powerful. There were too many hidden things in the Dragon Soul Holy Tower, but now was not the time to delve into this. He had to comprehend as much as he could within 2 hours, the super divine dragon martial skill that he had just chosen. And the method of comprehension very quickly appeared in front of him. To his surprise, the two Dragon Soul Demon statues began to fight in the field. Yi Yin, like Kong Shin-mu, had chosen two dragon martial skills. One was an attack type, the other was a defense type. Therefore, of the two Dragon Soul Demon statues in the middle, one represented Yi Yin, and the other represented Kong Shin-mu. They began to display the dragon martial skills that they had chosen. Kong Shin-mu quickly fixed his eyes on the Black Dragon Soul Demon statue. The Dragon Soul Demon statue began to display the extreme destructive Heavenly Might Dragon Soul and Despair canopy. It even displayed the power of the Divine Dipper Dragon incantation to surround the Dragon Soul Demon statue. The other Dragon Soul Demon statue displayed the dragon martial skill that Yi Yin had chosen. The two Dragon Soul Demon statues began to fight in the field. There was no doubt that the various dragon martial skills that the two Dragon Soul Demon statues displayed had reached the most terrifying extreme sacred level. As for Kong Shin-mu, his eyes shone with anticipation as he watched this scene. This was simply an opportunity that was tailor-made for him. The devouring power could devour the power of other people's dragon martial skills and convert it into Kong Shin-mu's own comprehension. Now, wasn't this an excellent opportunity for Kong Shin-mu? Yi Yin could only observe. He observed the two dragon martial skills that the Dragon Soul Demon statue displayed without blinking. The dragon martial skills alternated between offense and defense as if they did not know fatigue. During this period, the dragon martial skills constantly vibrated and released some residual energy waves. The residual energy waves made Yi Yin feel very touched, allowing him to start cultivating the two super divine dragon martial skills that he had chosen in the Heaven's Chosen Spirit formation. Logically speaking, for a dragon martial artist like Yi Yin who had reached the peak of talent, 2 hours was enough for them to successfully cultivate the super divine dragon martial skills that they had chosen to the human level. Therefore, Yi Yin also cherished this opportunity. The key was that the experience he gained from observing the dragon martial skills would be very useful for his future cultivation. It would definitely be of great help to Yi Yin in the future. After all, the two Dragon Soul Demon statues displayed the comprehension of the extreme sacred level. Even if he only remembered a little bit of this comprehension, it would be of great help to Yi Yin's future cultivation. It could even save him half of his future cultivation time. This was a very terrifying effect. As for Kong Shin-mu, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. This opportunity was too suitable for him. Chapter 51:18. Yi Yin was dumbfounded when he saw Kong Shin-mu's actions. He did not expect Kong Shin-mu to rush out at this stage. It seemed like he wanted to fight the two Dragon Soul Demon statues. Yi Yin was dumbfounded. Didn't they not need to fight in this stage? Could they just learn from the experience and comprehend it? Why did Kong Shin-mu rush out? But in next to no time, Yi Yin had a flash of inspiration. He suddenly thought, could it be that passively learning from the side isn't the best way? Does Kong Shin-mu want to fight with the Dragon Soul Demon statues to better understand the key points of the super mystical dragon technique that I want to cultivate? In this way, I should be able to comprehend more in just 2 hours, right? Naturally, watching from afar was not as fast as participating in the battle and comprehending the power of the super mystical dragon technique. The more Yi Yin thought about it, the more he felt that it made sense. Without any hesitation, he followed Kong Shin-mu and flew in the direction of the two Dragon Soul Demon statues. Anyway, in his opinion, although they were not required to participate in the battle in this stage, it did not stop them from participating in the battle either. Therefore, the more he thought about it, the more he felt that his guess was very reasonable. Therefore, Kong Shin-mu and Yi Yin flew toward the Dragon Soul Demon statue that was executing the super mystical dragon technique that they had chosen. Kong Shin-mu's devouring power had already erupted. The Dragon Soul Demon statue that was executing the super mystical dragon technique that he had chosen was a Black Dragon Soul Demon statue. At this moment, it was executing an offensive dragon-type technique, the Extreme Destructive Heavenly Might Dragon Soul. The Extreme Destructive Heavenly Might Dragon Soul created a Black Dragon Soul Demon statue beside it and condensed into a Dragon Soul Phantom. This Dragon Soul Phantom constantly absorbed all kinds of energy around it and transformed it into a pitch-black dragon breath that erupted toward its opponent. As the battle continued, the Extreme Destructive Heavenly Might Dragon Soul's attack would become stronger and stronger. His opponent was the Dragon Soul Demon statue that was executing the Super Divine Dragon martial skill that Yi Yin had chosen. It was a blue dragon soul demon statue. The blue dragon soul golem was currently using a movement technique. This movement dragon martial skill was one of the super divine dragon martial skills that Yi Yin had chosen. In comparison, Kong Shinmu had chosen 3 dragon martial skills, which were offensive, body refining, and defensive. Then the number of dragon martial techniques that Yi Yin could choose from would be much higher. Attack, defend, movement technique, stealth. There were a total of 5 top-notch ultra-divine dragon martial techniques, and each of them required 5 crystals to be exchanged. Every single one of these super divine dragon martial skills was the strongest super divine dragon martial skill. At this moment, when the blue dragon soul demon statue executed them, it was as if a dragon god had descended into the world, possessing incomparably terrifying strength. 2 attack-type dragon martial skills. A type of movement technique, a type of concealment, and a type of defense. The 5 dragon martial skills were executed alternately, and it seemed as if they had already suppressed the black dragon soul demon statue. However, although the black dragon soul demon statue's offensive strength was not as good as its opponents, it possessed unparalleled defensive strength. The divine astral dragon technique that it cultivated was a body-refining dragon martial skill. The divine dragon's body was surrounded by endless divine astral energy. This divine astral energy contained a terrifying defensive strength, so the opponent's attack could not hurt it at all. Looking at the current situation, it seems like I can still devour the opponent's dragon martial skill? Kong Shinmu thought to himself, somewhat tempted. If he devoured the opponent's dragon martial skill without knowing the specific cultivation method of the opponent's dragon martial skill, would he be able to learn it? Generally speaking, it was impossible to learn it. However, Kong Shinmu could still give it a try. After all, there was no harm in doing so. Soon, his devouring power continued to spreading to the battlefield where the 2 dragon soul demon statues were fighting. Where the black devouring power appeared, the power of the dragon martial skill was devoured and absorbed by Kong Shinmu. Then, it was stored in Kong Shinmu's devouring space. Most importantly, the power that he had devoured contained countless comprehension and mastery of the super divine dragon martial skill, and all of it was absorbed by Kong Shinmu. This caused Kong Shinmu to have a lot of understanding of the 3 super divine dragon martial skills that he had chosen. Although this would not allow him to directly cultivate these super divine dragon martial skills to the level of extreme saint realm, it would still allow him to obtain an unparalleled improvement in the cultivation speed of these super divine dragon martial skills. Although this would not allow him to directly cultivate these super divine dragon martial skills to the extreme saint realm, it would still allow him to obtain an unparalleled improvement in the cultivation speed of these super divine dragon martial skills. Originally, it would require 3 months of comprehension. Now that he had directly comprehended it, he could easily skip this stage. Extreme Destructive Heavenly Might Dragon Soul. Canopy of Despair. Divine Astral Dragon Technique. These 3 super divine dragon martial skills were quickly cultivated by Kong Shinmu as he devoured them. The place he chose was far away from the main battlefield where the 2 dragon soul demon statues were fighting. He only hid at the back and used his devouring power to devour the power of the super divine dragon martial skills. Therefore, he was not facing any threat. However, it was different for Yi Yin. This fellow had actually barged into the middle of the battlefield where the 2 dragon soul demon statues were fighting. After all, the 2 dragon soul demon statues had the power of a level 6 transcendent. At this moment, they were using their strongest super divine dragon martial skills. When the power of the extreme saint realm was unleashed, even Yi Yin, who had used all his defensive methods, could not withstand it at all. However, the heaven's chosen spirit formation that surrounded him gave him a boost. Not only did it increase his comprehension ability, but it also allowed him to absorb a portion of the super divine dragon martial skills power around him. I was right. The power and comprehension that he had absorbed was not even 1% of what Kong Shinmu had devoured. However, this had already allowed his cultivation efficiency to reach 10 times, or even 100 times, than before. In just 1 incense stick's time, he had already obtained the comprehension that would have taken him at least a day before. Although he was soon seriously injured, he directly consumed a healing elixir. Continue. The healing elixir worked very quickly, allowing him to quickly enter the battlefield to absorb the power of the super divine dragon martial skills. Unfortunately, he felt that he had absorbed it very quickly. However, He had not expected that Kong Shinmu's current devouring speed was truly at a heaven-defying and terrifying level. In just one incense stick's time, Kong Shinmu seemed to have cultivated for 3 months. The heaven-level super divine dragon martial skill had been cultivated by Kong Shinmu to earth level. Moreover, it was rapidly advancing to a higher level. Fortunately, there were 2 dragon soul demon statues separating Kong Shinmu and Yi Yin. Fortunately, the progress of the dragon martial skills cultivation was almost impossible for outsiders to see. Otherwise, Yi Yin would definitely exclaim that it was heaven-defying. When had he ever seen Kong Shinmu's cultivation speed? Chapter 51:19. Just like that, Kong Shinmu and Yi Yin began to cultivate on their own. Moreover, they did not know each other's cultivation progress. Yi Yin was tricked by Kong Shinmu. He had really thought that Kong Shinmu had come up to be whipped so that he could comprehend the power of those extreme Sage Realm Super Dragon skills. In the end, Kong Shinmu was devouring them. However, Yi Yin had hit the mark by a fluke. Although he had used up a lot of healing elixirs, his understanding of the 5 Super Dragon skills that he had chosen had indeed increased by quite a bit. It was much better than watching from the outside. The effect was about 3 to 5 times better than before. At this rate, after 2 hours, he would be able to comprehend these 5 Super Divine Dragon martial skills to the earth level, and that would be a relatively safe thing to do. As for Kong Shinmu, his progress was much faster now. After all, there was one more point. Jiang Shenwu had only chosen 3 ultra-divine dragon martial techniques. Hence, he did not have to split his attention like Yi Yin. Therefore, Kong Shinmu's speed was much faster than his. Coupled with the effect of the devouring power, after 1 hour, Kong Shinmu's 3 super dragon skills had already reached earth grade. Especially the body-tempering dragon skill, Divine Astral Dragon Technique. The more injuries one suffered, the faster one's comprehension of the dragon martial skill would be. Furthermore, it would also be supplemented with some special body-tempering cultivation resources. To Jiang Shenwu, these special body-tempering cultivation resources could all be devoured. If it was anyone else cultivating the Divine Astral Dragon Technique, it would be extremely difficult. After all, one would need to comprehend it and absorb the power of the body-tempering cultivation resources. Body-tempering cultivation couldn't be done empty-handed, right? Therefore, some of the more powerful body-refining dragon martial skills in the later stages would require some matching cultivation resources. It could be the body parts of some demonic beasts, or it could be some medicinal pills refined, or it could be a combination of the two to bring out the greatest effect. The medicinal power of these cultivation resources was extremely ferocious. It was not easy to absorb, and it was even more impossible to absorb them all at once. However, Kong Shinmu had the ability to devour. That was a different story. For Kong Shinmu, all he had to do was devour these body-tempering cultivation resources. He would be able to integrate them perfectly into his body without any loss. In this way, his cultivation speed was simply terrifying. Even without the demonstration of the Black Dragon Soul Golem's extreme Saint Realm Dragon martial skill, Kong Shinmu's speed of cultivating this dragon martial skill would still be very fast. In fact, it would definitely be much faster than cultivating a defensive or offensive type dragon martial skill. Therefore, within these 2 hours, Kong Shinmu could be said to have gone all out. The devouring power was almost depleted in an instant. Then, a portion of the power that was devoured was used to recover. Only then was it barely able to maintain its own consumption. He was under a lot of pressure. After all, he only had 2 hours. The main reason was because of the Heaven's Chosen Spirit formation. Within this formation, Kong Shinmu could indeed feel that his comprehension ability had directly increased by several times, or even dozens of times. It was hard to measure the specifics. All in all, Kong Shinmu felt that many problems were easily solved. He did not need to think too much, and many things naturally adapted to his divine dragon body. In other words, within the Heaven's Chosen Spirit formation, his divine dragon body was more compatible with the various attributes of heaven and earth. Naturally, it was easier for him to comprehend the dragon martial skill. This was an extremely different state. Otherwise, Kong Shinmu would not have been able to comprehend at such a fast speed. Even with the devouring power, it was impossible for him to have such a high understanding of the 3 new super divine dragon martial skills in such a short period of time. Most importantly, within the heaven-chosen Yuan spirit formation, He could comprehend the transcendent grade transcendent divine dragon martial technique with his peak martial emperor cultivation. This was the greatest benefit. Although his peak emperor stage divine dragon blood essence could not fully display the power of the super divine dragon martial skill. But this also allowed Kang Shinmu's strength to greatly increase. Putting everything else aside, just the divine astral dragon technique alone, this body-tempering dragon martial skill, had directly increased Kang Shinmu's defense by another level. Previously, in the third round of the final battle, he might have faced some second and first stage supreme gods, and would have been under some pressure. But now, it could be said that it was impossible for him to lose. This was because the improvement that he could obtain now was impossible for those supreme gods to obtain. They had already cultivated the super divine dragon martial skill. Now, at most, it could increase the level of comprehension of the super divine dragon martial skill by one level, but that did not constitute a qualitative change. As for Kang Shinmu, he could cultivate the 3 super divine dragon martial skills from scratch, all the way to the human level, earth level, and finally to the dragon level. The dragon level super divine dragon martial skill was already equivalent to the extreme sage realm holy spirit dragon martial skill. In other words, Kang Shinmu directly had 3 different methods. The body-tempering dragon martial skill, the offensive dragon martial skill, and the defensive dragon martial skill. These 3 methods were on the same level as the 9 ultimate dragon explosion. In fact, they were even stronger than the 9 ultimate dragon explosion. After all, they were more useful. Therefore, Kang Shinmu's improvement in strength was earth-shattering. Similarly, it was the same for Yi Yin. However, Yi Yin's 5 super divine dragon martial skills could only be cultivated to the earth level, so they could not be compared to Kang Shinmu. No matter what, now that Kang Shinmu's strength had increased, when he truly broke through to the super divine dragon level, his strength would undergo a huge change. The formless weapon Chen Xing needed to become a super divine dragon to be able to unleash its full power. Now, these 3 super divine dragon martial skills needed him to reach the super divine dragon level to be able to unleash them perfectly. However, the current Kang Shinmu had already reached a super terrifying level. Ordinary supreme gods at the 3rd stage were no match for him. Even if Kang Shinmu only relied on the strength of a dragon warrior, he could easily defeat most of the supreme gods at the 3rd stage. As for the 4th and 5th stage, Kang Shinmu could defeat them. It all depended on how powerful the other party was. Moreover, Kang Shinmu's fighting style was very effective against mediocre opponents with strong defense. Only an opponent who spent all his effort on attacking could defeat Kang Shinmu in one move. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to win against Kang Shinmu. Of course, an opponent at the 5th stage was already very terrifying. If it was an opponent at the 6th stage, Kang Shinmu would not be able to withstand it. Any random 6th stage would be able to defeat him in one move as long as they did not specialize in defense. After all, in the 3rd round, he did not have the time to devour energy in advance to increase his resistance. After all, his cultivation level was too low. However, he could not choose to break through now. Otherwise, his appointment with Mo Ya to go to the permanent intermediate ruins would be ruined. Chapter 51-20. Exploring permanent mid-level relics was something that Kang Shinmu attached more importance to. Therefore, he wouldn't miss it. This wasn't just a chance for him to consolidate his strength, but also a chance for him to reach a higher level. There, he would encounter more beings that were stronger than him. Most importantly, he could encounter many beings from other races. For Kang Shinmu, who had the devouring power, it was an excellent place to fight, and he could gain more enlightenment through it. Let's not talk about that for now. At this moment, in the Dragon Soul Holy Tower, Kang Shinmu and Yi Yin successfully challenged the Dragon Soul Demon statue and received the corresponding reward. Moreover, this was the reward before the 3rd round of the finals. In other words, this was an opportunity specially given to peak stage Emperor-level cultivators. That was because peak stage Emperor-level Dragon Warriors had the greatest improvement in such a reward, which was more beneficial for them in the 3rd round of the finals. Finally, Kang Shinmu and Yi Yin both completed the 2-hour enhancement of the Chosen One Spirit formation. They finally appeared in the hall of the Dragon Soul Holy Tower together. There were a total of 128 people in this hall, and they were ready to participate in the final 3rd round of the finals. Moreover, Kang Shinmu and Yi Yin seemed to be the last to arrive. It was mainly because their chosen one spirit formation lasted for 2 hours, and the others had basically finished challenging the Dragon Soul demon statues and came out. Most importantly, it seemed that no one else had the same opportunity as them. Originally, Kong Shinmu thought that there should be quite a lot of people who could defeat the 4 Dragon Soul demon statues. In the end, he hadn't expected that. It would only be him and Yi Yin. Of course, the others also obtained crystals in the previous rounds, and they could eventually exchange for some Super Shenron skills and the like. However, they didn't have the blessing of the chosen one spirit formation. Not everyone could have super combat power like Kong Shinmu so smoothly. It was even more impossible for those transcendent dragon warriors to challenge someone of a higher level than Kong Shinmu, because their potential was already set in stone. All in all, Kong Shinmu and Yi Yin seemed to be the 2 people who benefited the most from the challenge of the Dragon Soul Golems. Among them, Kong Shinmu's gains were much more than Yi Yin's. The existence of the devouring power allowed the 3 super divine dragon martial techniques he had chosen to reach the level of a dragon. Most importantly, no one knew that Kong Shinmu had actually devoured the 5 ultra-divine dragon martial skills that Yi Yin had cultivated. The 5 super divine dragon martial skills were of different types, and they were all extremely difficult to cultivate. However, Kong Shinmu had devoured the 5 ultra-divine dragon martial skills and cultivated them to the level of the ultimate sage realm. This was something that could not be avoided during the battle between the 2 Dragon Soul Golems. After all, their powers were intertwined, so when Kong Shinmu devoured his own power, he could also devour his opponent's power. This allowed Kong Shinmu to devour quite a lot of the 5 ultra-divine dragon martial skills that Yi Yin had chosen. Although Kong Shinmu didn't have the cultivation methods of the 5 ultra-divine dragon martial skills, the comprehension of the ultimate sage realm still gave him a deeper understanding of the transcendent dragon martial skills. The most direct impact was that Kong Shinmu seemed to understand a lot of the ways to use the ultra-divine dragon martial skills. At the very least, he could easily understand the weaknesses of the 5 ultra-divine dragon martial skills. Furthermore, he could extrapolate to the other ultra-divine dragon martial skills, which would be greatly beneficial to Kong Shinmu's future cultivation and improvement of the ultra-divine dragon martial skills. After devouring the comprehension of the 5 ultra-divine dragon martial skills, it seems to form a ball of comprehension. Kong Shinmu could vaguely sense that he was devouring the ball of comprehension in the space. The existence of the ball of comprehension seemed to be able to improve his understanding of the ultra-divine dragon martial skills. However, he couldn't use it to deepen his cultivation of the ultra-divine dragon martial skills for the time being. He didn't know how it could be used for the time being. He had to ask the Black Dragon Consciousness later. Even if he asked the ancestral demon god Consciousness, it would be difficult for the old fellow to explain. After all, it wasn't within the scope of the ancestral demon god's power. Kong Shinmu and Yi Yin appeared. The 128 people in the hall were finally all present. The 3rd round of the battle is about to begin. The notification from the Dragon Soul Holy Tower reached everyone's ears. The 128 most elite 5th grade disciples of the various sacred grounds were observing their surroundings at this moment. Every single one of them was observing their possible opponents. To them, this was the final moment to determine the ranking. Putting aside the rewards of the Dragon Soul Golems, apart from Kong Shinmu and Yi Yin, the rewards obtained by the others basically couldn't be converted into combat strength at this moment. Hence, apart from Kong Shinmu and Yi Yin, the strength of the others didn't increase at all. Only Kong Shinmu and Yi Yin actually cultivated the ultra-divine dragon martial skills. This was something that no one would have expected, because there had never been a precedent. The Sacred Ground battles a few days ago were all battles between first-class disciples and fourth-class disciples, which hadn't crossed the grade of the ultra-divine dragon's inheritance. Kong Shinmu was the first and only wave. Just after the start of the 3rd round of the battle, everyone got ready. Next, the 128 people in the field would be teleported to an independent small world in pairs for the final battle and the elimination battle. The loser would be directly eliminated. The winner could advance to the next round. The battle between 2 people couldn't be seen by outsiders, so this also eliminated the possibility of exposing any combat strength in advance. Once defeated, the Dragon Warrior student would be directly teleported out of the Dragon Soul Holy Tower and receive points corresponding to his ranking. Therefore, there was no opportunity to reveal any information about the defeated opponent to the other Dragon Warrior students who were still preparing for the battle in the hall. In the hall, everyone was looking forward to it. Just as they were waiting. In the outside world, everyone in the Dragon God's great world was also waiting for the results of the 5th-class disciples' battle. All the Holy Lands were rubbing their palms together. If their Dragon Martialist disciples could obtain good results, it would be the best opportunity to promote their Holy Lands. Right now, many Holy Lands wanted to recruit more Dragon Martialist disciples in order to gain an advantage in the future competition. Therefore, this battle could be said to be crucial. After all, the sacred grounds of the entire Dragon God's great world participated in the battle together. The ranking of the 5th-class disciples of the sacred grounds is already very important. After all, it has 5 times the weight. Yes, the 5th-class disciples can be said to be a watershed. Whoever can get the first opportunity is likely to get better results in the end. Chapter 51-21. In the great world of the Dragon Gods, who was the strongest among the 5th-class disciples of the various Holy Lands? The 5th-class disciple. It was not high, but it was not low either. It was a level that many people could see hope for, but had not yet reached. In other words, the competition of the 5th-class disciples was valued by all the disciples of the Holy Lands. Because most of the disciples of the Holy Lands had a high chance of reaching this level. Further up, a large portion of the Dragon Warriors would not pay much attention. Even if they did, they would not pay attention to who was the strongest. They would only pay attention to which Holy Land had the best results. Therefore, the competition between the 5th-class disciples affected the hearts of all the Dragon Warriors of the Dragon Gods. Our Heaven's Wing Holy Land will definitely be in the top 3 this time. Fu Wenhao is very strong. He will definitely be in the top 3. It just depends on what rank he can get in the end. By the way, there are many geniuses among our 4th-class disciples. Why didn't they do well in the end? I went to ask. It is said that he was defeated by a disciple of the 5 Extremes Mysterious Ice Holy Land called Ran Ran. 5 Extremes Mysterious Ice Holy Land? Conversations like this appeared in all the holy lands of the great world of the Dragon Gods. Many elders and supreme experts began to pay attention to the competition between the 4th-class and 5th-class disciples because they were the mainstays of each holy land. The 4th-class disciples were fine. Starting from the 5th-class disciples, it was a real contest of strength between the holy lands. Because the 5th-class disciples were basically peak emperor-level cultivators. In a war with other races, this level was equivalent to real combat power. Unlike the 1st-class and 3rd-class disciples, they were not qualified to go to the battlefield. They were too weak, and going to the battlefield was equivalent to sending themselves to death. When Kong Shinmu was on the battlefield in the Outer Realm, the strong enemies he encountered were all peak emperor level and above. The supreme god level could be considered a relatively strong existence. On the battlefield, they would be targeted. The 5th-class disciples just reached this threshold. Many holy lands knew which powerful existences were among their 5th-class disciples. These were the geniuses they were very optimistic about. Not only were they outstanding in cultivation, but they also had natural talents in combat. Therefore, many holy lands were guessing which holy land would get a good result. In any case, the name of the 5 Extremes Mysterious Ice Holy Land wasn't in everyone's expectations. This was because the majority of dragon martial artists' cultivation process was slow and long. Many geniuses would stay at the 5th-class disciple stage for several years or even decades. Therefore, in the past, there were many famous 5th-grade disciples who were widely known. For example, the genius of the Heaven's Wing Holy Land, Fu Wenhao. Fu Wenhao was now a first-stage transcendent god genius. He had been in seclusion for the past few years. It was said that he was cultivating some transcendent god dragon martial technique. Recently, he had reached the extreme sage realm and had finally come out. After coming out of seclusion, Zhang Xian had yet to challenge his promotion to a Tier 6 disciple. Instead, he was invited to participate in the competition between the Holy Lands. There were many people like Fu Wenhao in the whole Dragon God's great world. Many people believed that Fu Wenhao's strength could be considered as top-notch even among the 6th-class disciples. This was because even among the 6th-class disciples, very few were able to cultivate the ultra-divine dragon martial skill to the ultimate sacred level. Therefore, Fu Wenhao's strength could completely crush a 5th-grade disciple. It was a pity that no one knew that in the Dragon Soul Holy Tower, Fu Wenhao's face was already gloomy. Fu Wenhao was a tall and thin young man dressed in a purple-gold silk robe. His eyes were arrogant, but at this moment, He was observing Kong Shinmu with a gloomy gaze. Kong Shinmu and Yi Yin. They returned to the hall from the Dragon Soul Golem's challenge space together, and suddenly became the focus of everyone's attention. Who asked them to be the last to come out? Perhaps they had obtained many benefits that others did not know about. Moreover, Kong Shinmu had already achieved an unimaginably good result in the previous defensive round. He was ranked first in the defensive round. This made Fu Wenhao feel that he could not calm down. He was ranked second in the defensive round. After all, he had cultivated the super divine dragon martial skill this time. In terms of defense, he thought that he was super strong. However, in terms of defense, he was surpassed by Kong Shinmu. This simply shocked Fu Wenhao. What kind of person was Kong Shinmu? Moreover, Kong Shinmu was only a peak emperor level. That was the most important thing. A peak emperor level is no match for me no matter what. Fu Wenhao thought to himself. Just before the third round, which was about to start, Kong Shinmu and Yi Yin were whispering to each other. They were communicating and exchanging information, including the sacred lands they were in and so on. Suddenly, a figure appeared in front of them. You are Kong Shinmu, right? This was a young man, a level 2 transcendent god. He looked very strong, but the key was that this guy was still a 5th class disciple. It seemed that there was something hidden in him, and it was very likely that he had deliberately kept it for this competition. In other words, it was also possible that he had dropped from a 6th class disciple, just like Kong Shinmu. In any case, Kong Shinmu did not know this guy and did not know why he was looking for him. You are. Kong Shinmu glanced at the other person and sized him up. It was not Fu Wenhao, but someone else. He was wearing a luxurious black robe, and he looked like he had been in a high position for a long time. Long Hua of the Heavenly Frost Holy Land. The young man said calmly, I heard that you know Yu Ruolin of the Heavenly Frost Holy Land? Yu Ruolin? Kong Shinmu had some impression of this name. She was the leader of a training team he had met when he was training in the Outland Stronghold. That girl was quite strong. I don't really know her. What's wrong? Kong Shinmu's tone was a little cold. It was obvious that this young man, Long Hua, was not friendly. I heard from Ruolin that she admires you a lot. Now that I've seen you today, you do have some strength. Long Hua smiled calmly, and his tone was rather arrogant. However, real combat power is not obtained by taking a beating. I look forward to meeting you in the third round. It was obvious that this guy was here to declare war. Kong Shinmu did not think that he had offended Yu Ruolin, right? Could it be that Yu Ruolin admired Kong Shinmu, so this young man, Long Hua, was unhappy and had a problem with Kong Shinmu? Kong Shinmu did not take Long Hua's provocation to heart. The next moment, a few white lights flashed in the hall. The third round had finally begun. Chapter 51-22. There were 128 people, and if he wanted to get first place, he had to defeat 7 opponents in a row. And the further he went, the stronger the opponents would be. This was because those who could make it to the end were the powerhouses who could defeat the others. Although Kong Shinmu felt that Long Hua's provocation was a little baffling, he had to admit that Long Hua's strength was not bad. No one knew who their opponent would be arranged for them. When the white light appeared, Kong Shinmu, Yi Yin, Long Hua, and everyone else were ready. As the white light flickered in the hall, more and more Dragon Warrior students were teleported away. The first batch had a total of 64 battles, and they were carried out almost at the same time. Kong Shinmu discovered that Yi Yin and Long Hua were also teleported away in the white light. After everyone was teleported away, a white light lit up around Kong Shinmu. It was his turn. He didn't know how this order was decided. In short, after the white light appeared around Jiang Shenwu's body and disappeared, he discovered that he had arrived in an independent small world space. This was the sky above a barren desert. The sun shone brightly in the sky above the desert. Kong Shinmu saw that his opponent for this round was not far in front of him, less than 1,000 feet away. Dragon transformation. Kong Shinmu didn't hesitate and directly transformed into a dragon. His opponent also transformed into a dragon. At the same time, he felt a little depressed. Obviously, he recognized Kong Shinmu. This was the first place in the defense round, and he was the last to emerge from the Dragon Soul Golem round. Although his cultivation was only at the peak Emperor stage, His strength was probably stronger than some transcendent dragon warrior students. In any case, now that he had met Kong Shinmu, he could only fight. He couldn't just give up, right? What if he won? His opponent transformed into a dragon, revealing a snow-white ice dragon. An ice-attributed dragon martial technique was immediately unleashed. It seemed like he wanted to take advantage of the fact that Kong Shinmu was not fully prepared to fight and defeat Kong Shinmu in one fell swoop. Unfortunately, when the ice-attributed blizzard dragon martial technique reached Kong Shinmu's pitch-black divine dragon body, Kong Shinmu was already prepared. Divine Astral Dragon Incantation. Kong Shinmu did not hesitate to activate the God Astral Dragon technique. Immediately, an endless amount of God Astral energy surrounded his black dragon body to defend himself. Kong Shinmu's Divine Astral Dragon Incantation, the defensive strength of the Divine Astral Force was related to his own black dragon body's defensive strength. Therefore, Kong Shinmu did not use any defensive measures at all. After cultivating the Super God-grade God Astral Dragon Incantation to the dragon level, the defensive strength of Kong Shinmu's divine dragon body had reached a considerable level. Even if he did not switch to the Guardian mode and did not let the Chen Xing dragon weapon switch to a completely defensive form, his defense was not inferior to his previous strongest defensive form. This was the power of the Super God-grade God Astral Dragon Incantation. At this moment, endless God Astral energy surrounded Kong Shinmu's black dragon body. When the endless blizzard swept over, it was completely blocked by the God Astral energy. It could not even get close to Kong Shinmu. What kind of dragon martial technique is this? The other party was a little stunned and could not react for a moment. He could clearly feel that Kong Shinmu's defense seemed to be stronger than what he knew before, and it had not reached its strongest defensive form. He actually could not break through Kong Shinmu's defense? However, this guy was still one of the strongest 128 fifth-grade disciples in all the Holy Lands. That snowstorm just now was just a test. What came next was the real highlight. This guy was at the peak of the Martial Emperor stage, but his strength was definitely not weaker than Gu Xinyue, who was at the peak of the Martial Emperor stage. Of course, this was only talking about Gu Xinyue before she absorbed the power of the psychedelic astral crystal. Right now, Gu Xinyue's nightmare illusionary dragon's innate ability had become extremely strong, and it was not something that could be easily broken by anyone. At this moment, the opponent Kong Shinmu was facing quickly used an even stronger technique. The holy spiritual dragon weapon that had completely fused was used. It was a flower of ice, and after it was used, it turned into the power of ice that surrounded his body. With the support of this holy spiritual dragon weapon, this dragon martial artist student exploded with his strongest attack. Ice Arrow Rain. An ice formation appeared in the air around Kong Shinmu. The endless ice almost froze his entire black dragon body. At the same time, the ice arrow rain that had fused with the holy spiritual dragon weapon condensed in the air from all directions, and then swept towards Kong Shinmu. Ultimate Heavenly Might Dragon Soul. Kong Shinmu did not flinch at all, and immediately used the Ultimate Heavenly Might Dragon Soul. This was the attack-type super mystical dragon technique that he had just cultivated. When he used the Ultimate Heavenly Might Dragon Soul, he also activated the effect of the Celestial Dragon Weapon's 33 Divine Feathers. 9 black dragon souls appeared around Kong Shinmu, surrounding him completely. Then the surrounding ice formation and the ice arrow rain were all absorbed by these 9 black dragon souls. At the same time, these black dragon souls also had a devouring power, which was several times stronger than the ultimate heavenly might dragon soul used by ordinary people. All the attacks aimed at Kong Shinmu were devoured by these 9 black dragon souls. At the same time, the 9 black dragon souls launched an attack at their opponent. What they launched was a pure black dragon breath. These dragon breaths were converted from the devoured power. It could be said that the more power they devoured, the more power they could unleash. They could even strengthen the devoured power and add some dark-type attack power. The opponent did not expect Kong Shinmu's defense to be so impenetrable, and finally began to activate the Holy Spiritual Dragon Weapon's Brilliance ability that had been fused with it. Brilliant Gemstone. That guy actually used a Brilliant Gemstone on the Holy Spiritual Dragon Weapon. Suddenly, a golden defensive barrier appeared, blocking the 9 black dragon breaths that swept over from Kong Shinmu's side. Continue attack. Kong Shinmu's expression did not change at all. The 9 black dragon souls continued to absorb the power in the surrounding void. The void contained endless power. Moreover, the power absorbed by the 9 black dragon souls was getting stronger and stronger. This ultimate heavenly might dragon soul was a super powerful dragon technique that combined both offense and defense. It was incomparably compatible with Kong Shinmu's current fighting style. With both offense and defense, Kong Shinmu could really wait for his opponent to be defeated with this move. Chapter 51-23. The 9 black dragon souls constantly absorbed the power in the void and erupted with increasingly powerful black dragon breath attacks. The other party's brilliant ruby stone also dissipated after blocking 2 attacks. After all, the brilliant ruby stone's power was limited, and the golden defensive barrier could only last for a short period of time. However, Kong Shinmu's extreme destructive sky might dragon soul was getting stronger and stronger. The 9 black dragon souls constantly erupted with 9 black dragon breaths at the other party. This was the true power of the extreme destructive sky might dragon soul. The other party's attacks would be absorbed by the extreme destructive sky might dragon soul. At the same time, the might of the extreme destructive sky might dragon soul would also become stronger. Unless it was a power that exceeded what the extreme destructive sky might dragon soul could withstand and could destroy it directly, there was no other way to resist the extreme destructive sky might dragon soul. It could be said to be an invincible attack-type ultra-divine dragon martial technique. Soon, the other party couldn't resist Kong Shinmu's extreme destructive sky might dragon soul attack. Although the other party was very strong, Kong Shinmu's strength exceeded this level by too much. In fact, Kong Shinmu could even use the 9th stage ultimate roaring dragon burst and combine it with the power of the 33 sky divine feathers to defeat the other party in one move. However, he wanted to try practicing the brand new ultra divine dragon martial technique, so he wasn't too anxious. As the extreme destructive sky might dragon soul's attacks continued to strengthen, the other party was almost unable to resist. In fact, Xiao Chen was already executing his movement technique, a dragon-like martial technique, continuously dodging the attacks. Unfortunately, Kong Shinmu used the power of the 33 sky divine feathers to condense and release the 9 black dragon souls. No matter how the other party tried to dodge, he couldn't completely avoid Kong Shinmu's attacks. The black dragon breaths released by the 9 black dragon souls were extremely fast and could bombard the other party in the blink of an eye. If the other party wanted to dodge, the next wave of attacks would come. Anyway, the extreme destructive sky might dragon soul absorbed and devoured the power in the surrounding void, so there was no need to worry about exhaustion. The extreme destructive sky might dragon soul that I executed with the power of devouring is several times stronger than the one executed by ordinary people. Moreover, the speed of increase in power is several times faster than the others. This was because of the devouring power. Without the devouring power, the extreme destruction heaven might dragon soul wouldn't be so terrifying. The upper limit of the power it could absorb and devour would be much lower. With the help of the devouring power, the speed at which its power increased was several times faster. In just half an hour, the power released by Kong Shinmu's extreme destructive heavenly might dragon soul had reached the level of a transcendent god stage 4, and it was still increasing rapidly. Of course, there was a limit to how much the extreme destructive heavenly might dragon soul could improve. Take Kong Shinmu for example. He was only at the peak Emperor-level Divine Dragon Inheritance Blood Essence level. Hence, when the extreme destructive heavenly might dragon soul reached Transcendent God Stage 4, it would be much slower for it to improve further. He would need at least another hour to reach the power of a Transcendent God Stage 5. This was determined by Kong Shinmu's cultivation level. The further he went, the slower the power of the extreme destructive heavenly might dragon soul would increase. Hence, it was basically impossible for him to defeat an opponent that was originally impossible to defeat. This was also the limit of Kong Shinmu's cultivation level. Otherwise, this dragon martial skill could be said to be invincible. The higher he went, the slower the increase in power. However, at this moment, it was already very easy to use it to kill an ordinary opponent. Even in the entire finals, Kong Shinmu didn't need to use the power of a Transcendent God Stage 5. Very few people could withstand the power of a Transcendent God Stage 5. Even if they could withstand it for a short period of time, they wouldn't be able to last long. Hence, at most, they could only fight a protracted battle. To Kong Shinmu, as long as no one could kill him, he was already in an invincible position. The extreme destructive heavenly might dragon soul could be said to be a super divine dragon martial skill specially prepared for him. It was simply too compatible with his fighting style. Not long after, the Ice Divine Dragon was defeated. Kong Shinmu was shrouded in white light and teleported out of this small world. Damn it! If it wasn't for the fact that I'm in the desert, my combat power would be too restricted. Otherwise When the Ice Divine Dragon was defeated, he felt that he shouldn't have lost so quickly. If it wasn't for the desert, he felt that he could unleash his full strength. That way, Kong Shinmu's extreme destructive Heavenly Might Dragon Soul would have been destroyed by him. That way, he would have the basic conditions to win. Unfortunately, this guy was thinking too much. With Kong Shinmu's current combat power, no matter what terrain he was in, he could completely crush this dragon martial artist student. He returned to the hall. Kong Shinmu realized that he was almost the last to appear again. There were already more than 50 people in the arena. They should have already defeated their respective opponents and entered the next round of elimination. In the crowd, Kong Shinmu saw Long Hua. This young man was looking at Kong Shinmu provocatively. However, Kong Shinmu ignored him. Yi Yin also appeared in Kong Shinmu's line of sight. They looked at each other and nodded. Yi Yin's strength wasn't too weak to begin with. Coupled with his heaven-defying concealment ability, once he concealed himself, others really couldn't find him. If he found an opportunity to kill in one blow, there really weren't many people who could stop him. Therefore, Yi Yin's advancement was also within Kong Shinmu's expectations. On the other hand, Kong Shinmu saw that of the 5 extreme Black Ice Holy Land disciples, the man and woman, the man didn't appear. Even when the 64th person came out, he still didn't appear. Kong Shinmu knew that he should have been eliminated. Of the 5 extreme Black Ice Holy Land, only Kong Shinmu and that woman were left. However, Kong Shinmu wasn't too worried. He had to obtain first place in this battle. Next. Second match, third match. In these 2 consecutive matches, Kong Shinmu chose to end them quickly. He entered the arena and immediately transformed into a dragon, then combined the 33 Heavens Divine Feathers with the 9th stage Extreme Dao Flood Dragon Burst. Although the other side did their best to resist, their defensive methods were mostly swallowed up by Kong Shinmu's devouring power. They were simply unable to resist Kong Shinmu's fierce offensive. In the end, they were defeated. Kong Shinmu defeated 3 people in a row. And during this period, he was also one of the earliest dragon martial artists to return to the hall. Therefore he had the time to observe the other opponents, especially those who returned earlier. This meant that their combat power was able to crush their opponent, and their strength was naturally stronger. Kong Shinmu deliberately paid attention to the dragon martial artists who returned earlier. Long Hua's strength was unquestionable. Every time, she would appear in the first 5 in the hall. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.